Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That is Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla. What's up, Anna?
I'm glad I'm here and the sun is out, is what I'm going to say, because last time I came into the studio for a morning show, I think it was pitch black.
Yes, it was, because that was probably November?
Probably, yeah. December,
maybe
yeah,
somewhere in there.
Actually, I think it was January, January, February.
And it was
the dark days.
Freezing.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it probably would have been around when Andrew moved back to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably would have been like late January, early February. Yeah, it's a much different vibe coming into the studio when the sun's up and it's not pitch black out and you're not wearing, a parka. It is a much more pleasant experience rolling in the morning. Sometimes in the dregs of winter, you're just like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, it's just sad. You go to bed, it's dark out, starting at 4:30 p.m. And then you wake up, it's still pitch black, and you're already starting the day. It's not for the weak, Ravi.
It's not great. And people assume I'm a morning person because this is the job that I do. I am not at all.
Let's get that straight. Yeah.
Yes, I want it to be very clear. No matter how many mornings I wake up at 5 or 5:30 or whatever it ends up being after I hit snooze a couple times, not a morning person. I sit there. It takes me like 15 minutes every morning to go through this existential crisis of just why am I awake right now? And we get through it every morning after the first 15. By the time I hit my car, I'm good to go.
You're like, all right, let's go.
But as I'm getting ready, I'm just like, what are you doing, man? What is this? But it's too late now because now my dogs are trained to get up at that time.
Oh, yeah.
So I can, on weekends, I can get them to sleep in until 7:30, maybe 8. But my days of sleeping in are gone.
Yeah, they're over. So weekends, you're still waking up early?
I'm up by 8.
Yeah,
which is a bummer for me. Sometimes I can get them. I can let them out and then I'll go back to sleep. But I'm still up by 8. It's not great. I'm not a huge fan. But here we are. It is much better. It's supposed to be nice today too. Not
80s, that's not bad.
Scalding hot. Yeah. Which it wasn't too bad yesterday either. Some of the Hurrdat crew was out at the Sunburst Golf Invitational.
I heard there was a hole-in-one.
There was a hole-in-one. Shout out to Grayson, who is not technically on the sports team, but he's an honorary member of the sports team. But mostly because he's good at sports. But he knocked a hole-in-one out right at Iron Horse. It was incredible. I wasn't actually there because they split us.
Oh, so you didn't get to see.
So Kyle had a video of the whole thing because that's what Kyle does, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, Kyle was with Grayson and he hit a hole-in-one. It was unbelievable.
I don't think I'll ever understand that experience because I'm a horrible golfer. But I imagine if you were to rank that in your lifetime achievements, that has to be pretty high.
Oh yeah, it's got to, and it's really funny because there's a bunch of the Sunburst people were out there being kind of hosts on holes and stuff, and some of them don't know a ton about golf, and that's fine. And so we were telling one of them one of our teammates from Hurrdat hit a hole-in-one, and they're like, oh, does he do that a lot? And I was like, nobody does that a lot. No one. I was like, he's very good at golf.
Not even the pros.
I was like, yeah, he's very good at golf. No one does that a lot. I kind of it's like when pitchers throw a no-hitter or something. It's like, oh, do they do that? No, nobody does that a lot. There's you get maybe one. But no, it was super cool. I'm also very bad at golf.
Yeah, no.
I took a 12-year hiatus and I'm just getting back into it this year, so I'm quite bad still.
I took a lifetime hiatus from golf, so
just no interest?
No, I would love to play. I just don't get out there enough.
Fair.
I got to recruit some friends, I think, to get a little crew going so I can get out to the golf course.
Yeah.
Obviously, I need to ask Grayson for some lessons.
Yes. Well, Grayson apparently also a very accomplished tennis player.
Oh, okay. So he's just a talented guy.
Yes. And so I think Grace and I are going to go play some tennis because I've been taking tennis lessons.
Oh, boy.
I decided tennis is my country club sport, not golf. But we're still going to work on golf.
Maybe I should try that then.
Tennis is fun. I really enjoy tennis.
I've done pickleball. I'm decent at pickleball, but tennis is a lot harder.
So I used to play tennis a lot when I was young. And then, again, took a little bit of a hiatus. I started playing pickleball. And it made me miss tennis. And so I was like, all right, we're going to get back into tennis.
Interesting.
It's been good. But yeah, we got to We got to get Grayson out, and like maybe we might need to steal him to the sports team.
Yeah,
Just,
I think so.
like,
we need the athletic ability.
It's true.
For our kickball games.
Yes.
We
Just any outing.
Any outing that we do.
I think we need Grayson involved. He's probably the best athlete at Hurrdat, if I'm being honest. And we've got some decent ones.
I'm an athlete.
I know, like you and Avery, you were college athletes. I was a very long time ago on a much lower level, but I think Grayson might be the best athlete at Hurrdat.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that one, actually, so I'll let him have his flowers here.
We might need to, like, design some sort of competition to see who the best athlete
we could do
at
Olympic
Hurrdat
games.
is. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Kind of like office Olympics, but more athletic than that.
Not just like beer pong.
Yeah. And not just, like walking around on... You watch The Office?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like not just like walking around on the paper boxes or anything. Like we need actual sports here.
Okay.
But we'll see how that goes. But that was fun. Despite me being very bad at golf, it was a good time. And how often does one of your teammates get to hit a hole in one?
That's sweet.
But I also decided I think I'm like a 9-hole golfer.
Okay. Yeah.
The full
can't hang the whole way.
The full 18, I was like, I think I've had my fill for golf for today. I'm okay. You get to like 12, and I'm like, I probably could have stopped at 9.
Yeah.
Probably could have been okay there, but it was a good time, and I'm glad everybody was able to. Some of our UNO friends were out there too.
No way.
I think Coach Grasso from the women's golf team was out there. They won. They were very good, which makes sense. I mean, it's golf coach. Probably be a little embarrassing if he didn't win.
Yeah, you probably should win.
To be honest, but they did. They came through. Apparently, it's their second title in a row.
Dang. Okay.
So they're
Put some respect on the name.
They're getting after it. A title that means probably more than the All-Star Game title that we saw won last night. But are you an All-Star Game person?
I've always watched it growing up. It was like my favorite time because you get to see your favorite baseball players all together. Mm-hmm. I understand why people don't see the need for it and whatnot, but like you see all the stars meshing together. There's the red carpet, the home run derby to the All-Star game. It's like, why would you be against that? Yeah. So I'm all for it. I love the All-Star game. I watch it every single year. I remember watching it when it was on TV, but in Kansas City, and just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Those like couple years that all the Royals were on it. That's kind of my fondest ASG memories. But yeah, I'm all about it.
Yeah, I used to be obsessed with it, and I'm not against it in general. It just doesn't hold the same appeal to me as it used to.
Sure.
Although I will say, the fact that thing got done in like 2.5 hours last night, loved it. Mm-hmm. Like I think that was part of the problem is like with all the pitching changes and stuff. Those games lasted like 4 hours, and so it was kind of just a drag to get through. But last night they were moving.
No, it was quick.
And I gotta say, I was a fan. Also, I know he's not technically an Omaha guy, but I feel like he's kind of an honorary Omahan. Like we gotta see our guy Paul Skenes do his thing.
Yeah. Paul he did Paul things too, and I'm glad we got to see that Aaron Judge matchup between him.
Yes.
But yeah, I talk about a guy that breezed through Omaha and just has made it look so easy, but obviously it's not. I've heard him talk about his work ethic over and over, just about believing in himself and the confidence he has, and that just doesn't show up overnight, and so much work has gone into it for that guy. So, he deserves everything he's getting, but it was really cool to see him start as a rookie, and you think back just a year ago, he was in Omaha pitching.
Like almost exactly, just barely, like 13 months ago, he was here.
And it's just crazy to see. He's only been in the majors for 2 months, then starts the All-Star game. It's just unheard of.
I think he's the first player ever to be drafted number 1 overall the 1 year and then be the starting pitcher in the All-Star game the next year, which is crazy to think about. Like they've had All-Star games for 100 years, and he's the first one that's ever done that. And like I just keep waiting with Paul Skenes, like, okay, at some point it's going to get harder for him, right? Like I just keep waiting at some point. It's like, okay, maybe he'll hit a hiccup here.
Right, like who's going to get him?
Yeah, at some point he's going to have to figure something else out, right? And that's probably true, but the longer this goes, I go, maybe this is just who he is. Mm-hmm. I remember, this is a weird comparison, but that's kind of what I do. So I remember when Yasiel Puig was first up with the Dodgers, and he was hitting like 450.
Yeah, I remember.
And just mashing, and you're like, it went on for like a few months, and you're like, is this just who Yasiel Puig is? Like, did we just have an evolutionary jump in baseball, and this is just what a guy can be now? He just hits 450 and mashes homers. He's like, I guess this is a real thing. And then, he came back down to earth and became Yasiel Puig and was out of the league like 6 years later.
Yeah.
But like, there's part of me that just wonders, like, okay, is it ever going to get harder for Paul Skenes, or is it just going to be like, hey, as long as he stays healthy, like, this is just who he is?
I know. I've wondered the same thing, because I think the knock on him, if you can even give a knock, is like, oh, how long can he throw this hard?
Sure, yeah.
Right, like, how long is this going to take until his arm can't do it anymore?
Yeah, until he needs Tommy John or whatever, like everybody else does.
Until something happens like that. But, I mean, I truly think that Paul Skenes is who he is and will continue his dominance on the mound. But what I like that the Pirates are doing, like, they basically took away an opportunity for him to have a no-hitter.
Yeah.
And I think that's a smart move to really keep his arm healthy as possible. I think they're managing his pitches and his outings really well. So I think that'll contribute positively in the long term. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question of like, hey, how long can this go on? I mean, it's like feels like a magic show every time he's on the mound.
The other shoe has to drop at some point, right? Like it can't just be this easy forever. It was just like, yeah, I'm the best pitcher in baseball. It started immediately, and I've got no problems.
It's funny though, because you think about hitters, and I think slumps are a lot easier to get into versus a pitcher having, I don't know what you would really call it, I guess a slump too.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, how do you compare that of like what makes a pitcher? I mean, I would say it has to do with probably their mental health and their mindset on the mound.
A lot of it, yeah.
Right, because I mean,
and to be fair, that's a lot of it with hitters too. I mean, baseball's so mental on either side of it. But I think it's easier to get out of slumps as a pitcher because you have more opportunities, right? You're throwing, I mean, most guys, if you're throwing well at all, you're throwing 100 pitches a game, right? You're facing somewhere between 15 and 20 batters for the most part. That's so many more opportunities than a hitter gets, where it's like, you might not get 20 at-bats in a week.
But only one start every, 5 days, 4 days?
Yeah. And so it ends up being some carryover there. But also, like, I think for me, pitching is the more proactive part of baseball, right? Like, as a hitter, you're just reacting to what's literally thrown at you. Yeah. And it feels like you have less control over that situation. And so, for me, at least mentally, it would be much easier as a pitcher to be like, okay, I've got control over what happens next. Whereas a hitter, you're just like, man, if he throws it in a certain spot, there's nothing I can do, right? Like if Paul Skenes is painting 102 on the black, it's like, there's nothing I can do with that. Like I might swing at it, and I might even make contact, but I'm certainly not doing anything useful with it. And so I think that, for me, has always, the idea of getting out of a slump as a hitter is not just dependent on you.
100%, because it does count of what pitches are literally being thrown to you, and like, are you getting anything hittable? But you also have to think about in the pitcher's mind too. I had this explained to me, I think, in the best way possible. A pitcher's job is so unique because it's like 5 seconds of exertion and then 20 seconds of thinking. So I think that's also like just a mindset change, I think, that could contribute to any sort of slump with the pitcher. But like you said, Ravi, with hitters, it's really just what's given to you. Yeah. I mean, and you have to work around that. And there's so much there's only so much you can see on paper versus like, all right, this dude did have a great at bat. Like he took it to 10 pitches, 15 pitches, 3 times a game, but you could be 0 for 3.
Or he could smoke a ball right at a guy 3 times.
100%. And, it could be 108 off the bat and go right to the left fielder.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing about baseball, right? Is you can have great at-bats. You can smoke the ball, get nothing for it, and in the box score, it looks the same as if you struck out 3 times, or if you hit like 3 dribblers back to the pitcher. And mentally, you understand that as a hitter, and you start to look at that the same way, right? You don't look at it as like, oh man, I hit that thing on the screws, and like we're fine here. You start to see like, oh, I'm 0 for my last 8, or I'm 1 for my last 11. And you start to forget that it's like, oh, no, I'm hitting the ball really well. I'm just a little unlucky right now. You start to see those 108 off the bat to third base as a weak dribbler to third base. And, like, mentally, it messes with you really badly because you can do everything right, even if the pitcher gives you what you need to hit and you do what you're supposed to do with it and you still get nothing for your efforts. That could be really taxing mentally.
No, I think baseball is the toughest sport mentally. Probably the other one would be golf. Yeah. And I'll go back to something that Paul Skenes said when we interviewed him in Omaha. he said, I asked him how he gives himself grace through this process, because I'm like, you're expected of, like, there's so much expected of you, and I know he holds himself to such a high standard. Just like, how do you give yourself grace in these moments? And he basically said, it's never as good as you think it is, and it's never as bad as you think it is. And he said, in that, you give yourself grace. You just have to be objective with every start. Because when he came to Omaha, the Storm Chasers hit the first run off of him in the minor leagues. And for a guy like Paul Skenes, he's probably like, oh, like, come on, like, very upset with himself. But he said afterwards, he's like, I think that was my best outing so far. Yeah, sure, I gave up a run. But you look at my other ones, and maybe you didn't give up any runs, obviously, previously. But he said, objectively, I think today was still my best start despite giving up my first run in the minors. Yeah,
it's you can have that situation where, I think about basketball sometimes where you play a great defense and then somebody hits a stupid shot on you and you're just like, I did my job, right? Like I executed the pitches. Same thing can happen in baseball, right? You can execute the pitches. Somebody gets a barrel on it and like guesses right on, hey, this is fastball location, whatever, or he guesses right on a breaking ball, and you can put the ball exactly where you want it to and be like, yeah, I can live with that, right? I think it's when you don't execute what you're trying to that's when you're actually not pitching well or not hitting well or whatever. But being able to distinguish between those two things objectively in your mind is what makes baseball really challenging, because that's incredibly difficult to do, to just be like, oh, no, I did what I was supposed to here. Didn't get the result I wanted, but I can live with that. And, I think not that we have to bring everything back to Nebraska football, but I think we see that in kind of the way Nebraska football's preparing and trying to get themselves ready to go out on this season, right? Like Coach Rule talks about the process all the time. He talks about, okay, we need to, whether it's cleaning up turnovers or, hey, we need to be 4% better on third down getting off the field, or we need to get 10% more sacks this year, whatever it is, right? He gets really specific about these things.
That's what I'm excited about.
And he was excited to wear that crown yesterday, man. I still don't know what he was doing.
What's happening?
But he goes through this process and he describes it in great detail. And I think if he goes like, hey, if we clean up turnovers and we get 4 to 6% better on third down and whatever other incremental change that he wants to see, and the results aren't there, like I think he can live with that, right? I think he can live with, hey, we improved in all the areas we wanted to improve. We were better in red zone efficiency on offense and defense. We were better on third down conversions on offense and defense. And for some reason, they still end up not winning as many games as they think they should. I think he'll live with that. Like, I think that, or, like, knock on wood, injury bug hits or whatever, but you still accomplish the things you wanted to in terms of the process. I think he can live with that. And that's a really hard distinction to make, whether you're Paul Skenes executing pitches and giving up his first runs in the minors, or whether you're, like Tyrone Lue playing defense on Allen Iverson in the finals and he hits this crazy shot and steps over you, or if you're Nebraska football and you're trying to go from back to a bowl game for the first time in 8 years. Like I think that's the key to so many things in sports, is just being able to live with the results, knowing you've put the work in.
That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Mic drop. I think you have to separate things in sports into 3 different categories of things you can control, which is your preparation and your effort, and then things you cannot control, which might just be talent, which is what you're talking about, and ability to step up in big moments. And when the adrenaline's going, does the shot fall? Does it not? There's a lot you can't control in those moments. And then there's the things that you think you can control, but you can't.
Yes.
And I think that's the one that people in general struggle with the most.
That's where you get in trouble.
And that's the hardest one to identify too, because you think you have control over it, and you think, because I play so hard and I prepare so hard for this moment and I still fail, you think that you can control external circumstances that have to do with it, but you have to live with the fact that you can't control everything. And I think the more time and effort you spend on what you can control and how hard you prepare, your effort, your attitude in practice and in games, I think that's when the success starts to take over, because there's so much in life that we all can control that we just worry about, and that it's just not doing anything positively for us. So yeah, I think it's a lot of that mental side that I feel like we come back to a ton, but it's the same thing with Husker football. And I mean, I had a great conversation with MJ Sherman, and he told me, hey, last year could have been the year. you know, but there was those 3 points or those incremental, those small things that we didn't clean up on that was a difference maker. And some of it was stuff we could control. Obviously, there was some that they couldn't, but there was a lot of controllable factors last year that they, they could have been to a bowl game. They could have won 8 games, right? So there's so many little things that I think are the big focus that I hope are addressed in the off season. But yeah, I think that goes for any sport.
Yeah, I mean, not just sports too. I mean, you kind of touched on it there. Like, that's just life. Like, just knowing what things you don't have control over. If you can come to grips with that, you're going to be way ahead of the curve, right? Because so much of our time is spent worrying about things or trying to prepare for things that we think we have some influence on that we don't at all.
100%.
Right? And you bring up a really good point with your conversation with MJ Sherman, that there was I almost think it's in a weird way, it's a positive thing that so many things that went wrong last year were in their control, because you don't just look at it and you go, oh God, we just got our heads beat in. People are so much better than we are.
Sure.
You look at it and you go, nope, probably should have beat Iowa. Probably should have beat Wisconsin. Probably should have beat Maryland. Probably should have beat Michigan State. And you go through these, or maybe they did beat Michigan State. I don't remember. I don't think. No, they lost those last 4 in a row. It's been a long time now.
It's been a while.
It has.
Summertime.
We're almost ready to go again. But you go and look through these things and you go, okay, so you think the talent's actually there. If we can clean it up, we're in good shape, right? And to me, if I'm a player or I'm a coach, I love that opportunity, because that's like, oh, I can fix that, right? It's when you go and you're like, I can't really scheme around the fact that my offensive lineman can't block, or I can't really scheme around the fact that my defensive backs are not fast enough to keep up with the receivers in the Big Ten or whatever, right? Like, if you look at it and you're like, oh, we got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot, deal,
yeah,
right?
By me.
100%. Coming up on the show today, we've got Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7, Andy Kendeigh from KETV, Steve Gardner talking baseball for USA Today, Gary Java from the Pinnacle Bank Championship, and at some point, hopefully, we will catch up with my normal co-host, Damon Benning, as he fills us in on what's been going on as well. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage at the beautiful Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill in La Vista. Also a Gretna location, don't forget about that. But we are at the La Vista location because we got this great venue out here. So, gotta take advantage. But I was still thinking about Paul Skenes.
Hard not to.
If I'm being honest. And, so I'm scrolling through Twitter and, Pitching Ninja. So he had a video of Livy Dunn on the red carpet with Paul Skenes and doing like her pitch grips or whatever and it was a cool video. But, you mentioned the preparation and stuff that Paul Skenes goes through, because, he's not just like, obviously he's super naturally talented, but I always look at guys that are late bloomers like he was, where, like he went to Air Force before he became Paul Skenes, right? And he was just kind of a dude, and then all of a sudden he became Paul Skenes. Well, it's never all of a sudden, right? There's like a tremendous, like you said, tremendous amount of work and preparation and everything that goes into that. And then usually you get some small like physical bump or whatever, like you grow an extra couple inches and all of a sudden you go from like, oh, I'm just this sort of, still a Division I baseball player to I might be the best pitching prospect ever. And the one thing that I thought about when you said that originally was watching these videos of his warm-up routine.
Yeah.
Because it's the most elaborate thing I think I've ever seen a pitcher go through. Half the time he's not even using his arms. Like his arms are like tucked in here and close to his body, whether he's got the backpack on or whether he's just doing his like rotations or whatever. And the first thing I thought of when I saw that was, you don't come up with a warm-up routine like that unless you work ungodly hard. Like, you don't have that warm-up routine just by accident.
You can't just Google that.
Yeah, like, that's not something that you're just
That's not on YouTube.
how to warm up to pitch. Like, that's not.
And it's not what it says if you were to Google it.
No, right? And so, like, I'm going through this thing and I'm watching it, and I'm kind of fascinated with this stuff because I used to do strength and conditioning, and I'm just watching this thing. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, oh, that's really smart. Yeah, he's probably activating his core that way, and he's getting his legs involved and saving his arm at the same time. And I'm watching this whole thing, and I was like, this is something that he probably has taken years to perfect this warm-up routine. And listen, does that mean he's not going to get hurt? No, it doesn't. Like, I have no idea. If maybe he's got the Nolan Ryan arm, and he's going to pitch till he's 43, 45, whatever Nolan Ryan was, and be fine his whole career, and then at the ripe old age of 45, blow out his UCL and still throw 98 on the next pitch. Like, whatever. Like, I don't know, right? I don't know what Paul Skenes' career looks like. What I do know is if he does get injured, if something happens, it will not be because he didn't work hard enough.
No, I mean, the preparation is 1,000% there for that guy, and I think a lot of it you could probably point back to his days at Air Force and just the routine that I'm sure he was under at Air Force to be able to, do all of his training and whatnot in school. And then also, you're literally in the military as well. Doing everything else for that. So, like, that's incredible time management. And I think just a schedule and
discipline.
Discipline. And I think that's the biggest word that I would go to with Paul Skenes is discipline. And I mean, so many athletes have talked about this, but motivation is a fleeting feeling. Motivation is literally just an emotion, but I think discipline is a mindset, and it's a choice. You choose to be disciplined. You don't choose to be motivated. Anybody can have motivation, but it takes the right person and the right athlete to have that discipline and choose to wake up every day and do the hard things, which honestly is all the stretching, all of the warm up and everything. I mean, the worst part of running track was having to warm up for
all the stuff that's
an
not
hour,
fun,
right? And then I run for 13 seconds, right? So it's like, you warm up for so long for such a short period of, of actual physical exertion that, counts on a competitive scale. So it's so much discipline, preparation, and just a mindset that you have to get into. And obviously Paul's like completely just been so determined and has shown so much in his preparation that, no wonder why he's so successful on the mound. Like, I don't think it surprises him whatsoever. He's like, yeah, because I put in so many hours and I put in so much work, of course I'm going to be this successful. Like, I don't think anything has taken him by surprise. Like, he's not a very emotional guy in the first place, but he's getting told that he's starting the All-Star game and he's like, okay,
cool.
Like, why wouldn't I? Like, that's just him. That's his mindset. That's his confidence. And I mean, going back to the conversation we had with him in Omaha, Avery Howard had asked him, like, how is he so confident on the mound? And his answer was literally, I've been doing this for a while. Yeah. He said it just comes from pitching so much.
Well, and it's the preparation gives you confidence, right? Like, there's a ton of just examples where, whether it's, you're a quarterback and you either are watching your film or you don't watch your film, or
Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, right. That's actually exactly what I was thinking of, right? He had confidence anyway. Yeah. But it works. But eventually you get to a spot where he got to the NFL and his preparation wasn't right. And then all of a sudden, when it didn't work on what he didn't done his whole life, then he's had this crisis of confidence, right? It's kind of the same thing whether you're like doing a radio show like this. Like, the more you prepare for a show, the more comfortable you're going to be to get on the air, right? Because like, hey, I've done the work to be able to do this correctly and successfully, right? And in a weird way, like, it almost seems like military academies would sort of be like a perfect breeding ground for not just athletes, but like specifically pitchers, because like pitchers are so like routine and like routine oriented, I guess is the way I would put it, where like that's how they get past some of the hiccups sometimes, is like, oh, I just got to go back to my routine, right? Like, you fall back on your training is what we call it a lot of the time, but you fall back on your routine because it's like, okay, if I get into a spot where I don't totally know what to do, my routine tells me what to do. I don't have to think about it, right? And that's basically military academies, is until you get to this point where you get the right to think on your own and you've earned the right to think on your own, you don't have to think about anything because somebody else is telling you what to do. And your routine tells you what to do. in kind of a weird way, I almost feel like that's a perfect mindset to be able to instill in pitchers. Now, obviously, you're not going to run a bunch of major leaguers through military academies because it doesn't make any sense. But I do wonder how much of a impact that training had on him to be, or maybe he's just a guy that's wired that way, so that's why the military made sense. Like, I don't know. It's like a chicken or an egg thing. I think it
put it on 100 for him.
Sure, yeah.
I think he was already like that.
He like leaned that way.
And then obviously you go to a military academy for a reason. You're not going to go if you're somebody that hates time management and is lazy. So he shows up there, and then I think everything was magnified by 100. One of my favorite quotes that I've been told is, you don't rise to the occasion, you rise to your level of preparation. And I think that's so true, because people think sometimes, like, these athletes, oh, the lights are bright and they just show up. No, it's because they've been putting so much work in. Again, back to what you said, you trust your training, you trust your process. Then you can do what you do on the field or the court or the mound, because you've put in so many hours behind the scenes that it becomes so much easier for you. There's no such thing as just showing up one day to work and being the best, right? Like, so much goes in for these athletes, and I mean that's obvious for Paul Skenes. Yeah,
and it's it's funny because like you brought up Johnny Manziel kind of in this on the opposite side of this conversation, right? And people will point to Johnny Manziel and be like, oh, well, I mean, he kind of just showed up and was the best or whatever. But there's always, like, that's when the other shoe drops, right? Like, there's always a point where it's like, oh, like, that's why this guy wasn't able to get through here or there. Like, there's no mystery why Johnny Manziel didn't work in the NFL. Like, it's super obvious, right? If Paul Skenes were to have not worked in Major League Baseball, that would have been a mystery, because you're like, well, he's got the talent, he's got the work ethic, like, what went wrong here, right? And I kind of have this fascination, which is why we've been talking about Paul Skenes for 40 minutes at this point. But I have this fascination with, like, phenoms and just kind of how they're wired, right? Because it seems like more often than not, you end up getting these stories. And it can kind of manifest itself in different ways, but you end up getting these stories like we've got with Paul Skenes, where it's like, oh, yeah, no, he's actually like a full-fledged psycho about his preparation. Or you get the Kobe Bryant stories where it's like, yeah, these guys were returning from the club at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was in a full lather in the gym, like done with his workout already, right? Like, you tend to get these back, and you're like, oh, no, these guys are all nuts. That's why they're good at this.
Yeah.
And it seems like, regardless of how it looks from the outside, that's almost always the point that we find out or that we get to with these individual guys. So I'm sure we will talk about something besides Paul Skenes at some point today, but I do think that was a good conversation, so I wanted to kind of wrap that up there. Coming up next, we will have more Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Interior stage. We've been talking a lot of All-Star games, a lot of Paul Skenes, which rightfully so. He had a super cool moment yesterday in starting the All-Star game as a rookie. But as we turn the corner from first half of baseball season into the second half of baseball season, that also means we are very close to football, which I'm very excited about. And that means we've started looking at lists, because that's what we do when it's July and you're like, football's close, but it's not close enough.
So let's make a list for everything.
We start looking at lists. And one of the lists that I came across was this Pro Football Network's top 100 players. I'll be honest, I have no frame of reference for what Pro Football Network even is. I follow a guy on Twitter because he used to be a Boston Red Sox beat writer, and now he's somehow associated with Pro Football Network. And so that's how I came across this list. So if you're, I'm arguing with the validity of some of the rankings, but that's where the source is, just so everybody's aware here. It does appear to be a legitimate website. It doesn't look like it's being run out of somebody's basement, just, for whatever that's worth. But they ranked the top 100 players in the NFL this year. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is number 1. No problems there.
No question.
Where I but I run into an issue like very quickly after this, and that's they've got Lamar Jackson at number 3. Now, I'm not a hater on Lamar Jackson. He's very, very good, at least in the regular season. I don't think he's the third best player in the league. I'm sitting here, and we kind of were starting to talk about this off air, and I go, he might be the second best quarterback in the league, but I think the gap between Mahomes and number 2 is big enough that having the second best quarterback in the league as the third best player in the league doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to, I'm kind of doing this mental exercise. Like, okay, who would I take after Patrick Mahomes? And we named probably 8 guys. And I don't know if any of them are the right answer. But I'm sitting here and I go, that kind of just illustrates to me the gap between Mahomes and everybody else is kind of staggering. Which is, you're like, okay, well, yeah, he's one of the best of all time already. That makes sense. But, like, think back to when Tom Brady was doing this, right? He always had someone in his neighborhood. Mm-hmm. First it was Peyton Manning. Mm-hmm. Then it was Aaron Rodgers. Like, you had somebody that was like, for a lot of the time, people would be like, oh, maybe Rodgers is a little bit better. Maybe Manning's a little bit better. Now, the totality of it, like, there's no question now. But in the moment, it was, maybe I would take Manning over Brady, or maybe I would take Rodgers over Brady. No one has that conversation with Patrick Mahomes.
No.
There is not a soul, living or dead, that I think anyone would take over Patrick Mahomes. And so I'm just sitting here and I go, okay, how big is that gap between Mahomes and everybody else? And where does that put a guy like Lamar Jackson, who very well could be the second best quarterback in the league and still not even be in the same conversation as Patrick Mahomes?
Well, I think the biggest difference is postseason accolades.
Sure, for those 2 guys specifically.
Yeah, for those 2 guys, to answer your question, I think it's postseason and their ability to, shine bright on the biggest stages. But, I mean, I think Lamar is a top 5 quarterback in the league, no doubt.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, I think top 3, really. And we're kind of struggling to even really come up with the number 2 QB because you talk Joe Burrow, and, he's been...
That's health, right?
He's been injured, right? So we haven't really seen that potential.
Personal preference, I take Joe Burrow too, but if you're like, well, I can't count on the guy because he's missed multiple full seasons, I'd be like, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know what to tell you.
And they have Burrow here at 12.
Mm-hmm. Right after Josh Allen, who's a guy I don't think either of us like that much.
Well, yeah, they were actually just showing him up on the screen, and apparently some anonymous NFL executive said he's the most overrated player in the league. Pretty bold statement for an anonymous source.
It is. Well, you know how bold people get when they're anonymous. But yeah, I'm sitting there and I go, I'm not a huge Josh Allen guy. I've never been. He turns the ball over too much for me. He basically had 1 year where he didn't turn the ball over very much, and we sort of keep expecting him to return to that when that appears to be the outlier, not all these other years where he turns the ball over a ton. And he's super talented, don't get me wrong, and I don't know where the Bills would be without him, but I also don't trust him, and I don't want to put him in the top. I mean, I don't want to put him at number 2. Mm-hmm. I almost don't want to put anybody at number 2.
There should just be a gap.
Like, I feel like it's 1 space 3, and then we can start having these conversations because somebody's going to bring up Justin Herbert, and it's like, hey, win any games, but
I know.
Win any games at all. Because I'm going through this, and I go, okay.
Where do they have Brock on this list?
We do need to know where Brocktober is.
Let's see. 55.
Ooh, that seems low.
That's pretty low.
That seems low for my guy.
Josh Hines Allen, an edge rusher from the Jaguars, is above him at 54. So
I feel like I would rather have Brock Purdy.
When you think about guys that impact winning, I mean, Brock Purdy's your man there.
Oh, without
whatever you want, system, whatever, he wins ball games.
So I brought up this separate list of just quarterback rankings because I was curious where and this is Pro Football Focus, which I do have more familiarity with, but they've got Brock Purdy at 13.
Oh wow!
So he's behind. So okay, let's have Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott.
Brock Purdy.
Dak Prescott's 6th.
What?
Are you taking? So you've got Brock or Lamar. That's easy.
Okay, Lamar, yeah.
Brock or Joe. If Joe's healthy, I'm taking Joe. Brock or Josh Allen. That's where I'm not. Like, I get Josh Allen's more talented. I do.
Yes.
I don't know if I would rather have him as the quarterback. Like, I'm a 49ers fan, so I can sit here and be like, would I rather have would I trade Brock Purdy for Josh Allen straight up?
No.
I don't think I would.
No.
Now, I think part of that's probably the offense, but I think I'm going Brock Purdy there. Brock Purdy or Justin Herbert. I take Herbert, but I think it's closer than people think.
Yeah.
Because Herbert does perform at that level, so I'm like, okay, maybe if he's just in a better situation. Mm-hmm. But I do have concerns there. Like, I have concerns about him because he didn't win that much at Oregon either. Like, I don't really know what to do with him. Definitely taking Brock over Dak Prescott.
1,000%.
This one's kind of hard because he's older. Brock Purdy or Matthew Stafford?
Ooh, Brock.
I don't know. Yeah.
Matthews won a Super Bowl, though, so.
And he's really good.
No, he's really
Stafford's really good. I'd probably go Stafford.
Would you rather have Stafford or Goff? I think those are like two interchangeable faces in my mind.
That one's really hard because I actually think Jared Goff's really, really good.
Yeah.
And, oh, man. Would you rather have Goff or Purdy?
Purdy.
I think I would take Goff.
Really?
I think so. I think Jared Goff is really good.
I think I'm too big of a Brock Purdy fan.
I love Brock Purdy. I do. I'm a 49ers guy. I love Brock Purdy.
The sample size is too small.
It's really
to
small.
Truly say,
and I feel more comfortable that I know who Jared Goff is.
Yeah.
As a long term.
I mean, the correct answer is Jared Goff, but I'm just being biased.
This is interesting again because he's old. Aaron Rodgers or Brock Purdy?
God, I can't stand Aaron Rodgers.
I'm taking Brock just because he seems like less of a D-bag.
Less of a problem.
This one's it. Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts?
Jalen Hurts. And that is horribly low on that list.
Yeah, he's 9 on this list.
And he's been disrespected because I saw top 100. He wasn't apparently he's not in the top 100 for NFL.
Is he in the top 100 of my list? He's got to be. What are we doing here? Okay, he's 43.
Okay, good.
So that makes sense.
I don't know what I saw, but they were talking about on ESPN of him getting disrespected in the rankings. But Jalen is way higher than. No, yeah,
I don't know if I
would put Jalen Hurts he's a top 5 quarterback in this league in my eyes.
You think so?
Yes.
What do you do with CJ Stroud?
Ooh, that's another good one. Sample size small.
Sample size says really small, but he was unbelievable.
But he was unbelievable, yeah. So it's tough to. You're kind of just going on personal preference of experience or talent.
I think I'd take Stroud over Purdy.
You would?
I think so.
Yeah, more upside with the legs. Yeah.
And he's I don't know. This is dumb. I kind of trust the pedigree a little bit. Like he's been this guy for a really long time. And so I kind of know what to expect from him a little. I feel like I know what to expect from him.
What's Stroud on that list?
Stroud's 10. I would take
of quarterbacks.
Yeah. He's 10 on the quarterback list. He is.
Wait, and they have Jalen at what number on that list? On the quarterback list? 9. And they have Stroud at 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think I would take Stroud over like half the guys ahead of him.
Yeah.
I think I would take my chances there.
I just want to know how they come up with these lists is also the question. Like, what are the determining factors? Is it stats? Is it how much you impact your team?
Yeah, so Pro Football Focus, I'm guessing they use their algorithms or whatever because it's all data-driven and that kind of thing. But I think you can get into some trouble there. I think that's how you end up with Dak Prescott, who puts up good numbers, but isn't.
He's just not it.
I don't know any Dallas Cowboys fan that would take Dak Prescott over C.J. Stroud. Do
they have my boy Kirk Cousins on there?
I'm sure he is. Where is good old Kirk? Kirk is 15.
Okay.
Does that feel high or low?
Okay. That's just right for me right now.
You know what's low?
If you were asking me last year, I would have freaked out if that was at 15. He was a top 5 quarterback last year.
You know what's low? Jared Goff is 16 on Pro Football Focus's list.
Of quarterbacks, wow.
16.
Yeah, that's pretty low for a guy that took a Detroit team
to the NFC Championship. I know you like Cousins. I would take Goff over Cousins.
That's another interchangeable 50-50 one for me.
Goff,
Stafford, and Cousins I find to be relatively
basically the same person.
Yeah, basically the same person.
They're identical.
Put their head on different. Yeah.
Goff or Tua?
Tua.
Really?
I'm a Tua fan.
Really?
I believe in the boy Tua.
I would not have guessed. I think I go Goff there.
Really? No. Tua.
I think so.
Come on.
Coming up next, we've got Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. We might find some more time to argue about quarterbacks later, or we'll do it some other day because it's the middle of July. What else are we going to talk about? Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7, coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. What's up, BC?
Not much. Do you guys have J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold number 2 behind Mahomes? That's my only question.
Ooh. Do you have J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold number 2 in their own quarterback room?
Hey.
Wow.
That's not what I meant.
I'm gonna say they're a distant 32nd.
All right.
Hey, I'm a JJ McCarthy fan, so just wait for this Vikings season.
There you go, Anna.
The North is the Vikings.
I actually didn't hate the draft pick. Thought it was a little high, but you got to get him where you get him, right? I don't love what I've heard out of his experiences so far. It's a little concerning.
What have you heard?
That has been pretty.
Yeah, who are your sources on the ground?
Listen, I'm pretty plugged into the Minnesota scene. You know, you got to watch out here. Not quite as plugged in as I am to Champaign, Illinois, but no, it's there's been some talk that it hasn't been great.
Okay.
There's some rumors going around.
Sam Darnold's about to have the year of his life then.
I still don't understand why Sam Darnold's not good at football. I still don't get it.
With Ryan Fitzpatrick sort of thing. Like, he should have been good.
Like, I mean, BC, do you know what I mean? Like, I could watch 1,000 plays of Sam Darnold and not be able to tell you why he's not a good NFL quarterback.
He's one of those guys that it feels like everybody in the NFL looks at and says, I can fix him. You know, he's sort of like a messed up man that some people would look at me like, woman be like, yeah, I could fix that guy. It's like, no, you probably can't. But we'll see if Kevin O'Connell can. I mean, I'm kind of a big KOC guy, and so if he can't fix Sammy, then I don't know. Maybe nobody can.
I mean, he's going Kyle Shanahan to KOC back-to-back. If he's not fixed after this 2-year run, it's not happening. But I guess, like, what even would the red flags be? Like, you bring up, like, trying to fix somebody in a relationship, but there's always I don't even know what Sam Darnold's red flags are, except for the fact that he just hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not a bad living though. If you can carve out that space where after like 5 to 7 years it's figured out you're not going to be the starter, but you're going to be over here. You'll be part of an NFL team. You might be on Hard Knocks one season. You might have to do that. You know, and then you might get inserted in a game in like week 13. You know, like I think I'd sign up for that if I were an athlete.
100%.
We call that the Chase Daniel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, there's definitely worse ways to make a living, without a doubt. BC, I suppose we could talk about some Nebraska stuff now.
Okay.
There's been quite a bit of talk about the last weekend in July as a recruiting weekend. You know, DB said he thinks that if they can get David Sanders back on campus that weekend, that he thinks there's a real shot there. We heard Garrett McGuire talk about that last weekend in July on Sports Nightly last night. Talk to me for the lay people who maybe don't follow the day in and day out of recruiting the way some of us do. Like, why is this last weekend in July shaping up to be so important?
I mean, it sounds like they're going to get some really good names into Lincoln. We're still confirming some of them, like a few that people know for sure. Like, there's a couple, you know, California kids that are, you know, 4-star prospects and 26, and then a 27 one who's going to be, who are coming in. So I think that shows you, like, there's a wide range on this net to where people are coming from. Like Hudson Parliament, who has one of the best names of any recruit.
Incredible.
Who you want to land just for that alone probably, is one of the guys coming in. And then, like you say, there is buzz about, like, you know, Sanders, maybe the possibility to get him here. And if you do that, I mean, obviously it speaks to his level of intrigue that he would return one more time. But, you know, every time I feel like they get people in their building, around their coaching staff, and can show, hey, this is the family part again. Don't forget how much of a family it is over here. It always plays really well for Nebraska. So that list will get more firmed up here in the next week. I don't want to talk out of turn too much with some guys while I know a little bit's up in the air, but it does seem like stuff is really brewing for one, like, last big push that kind of puts you in a good space with not just like a 25 guy, but 26, 27 guys for the future. So you're already kind of off and running then as you go through the fall with some of the guys a cycle or two ahead, which is always critical nowadays.
BC, I guess from like, and I understand you don't want to name any names and that you're not sure on, and that's totally fine. But I guess just like philosophically, why is it shaping up this way? Is it just that guys now are more kind of looking to make decisions before their senior year starts, or just from is it just a scheduling thing that's worked out this way?
good scheduling day for a lot of guys before like their camp stuff gets going. It's sort of that in-between period. You know, a lot of 26, 27 guys who are a cycle two ahead are just starting to dance a little bit, right? I mean, so this is an opportunity maybe to get that first experience for a few of them of like a visit like that. But I just think it's kind of that perfect wheelhouse of if, you know, you're looking at a date where prospects, they're kind of all camped out, but there's like this little mini period before maybe their high school stuff has started up, you know, day to day, and you can get them here. And so why not? It's a good weekend to shoot your shot with some of those guys.
BC, there was a little bit of shifting in Nebraska's current commits in their rankings over I think it was last week when you guys released your ratings update. I know that you personally do not make the ratings, but I guess how much insight do you have on, you know, like Sean Hammerbeck, for instance, goes from a 3-star to a 4-star. TJ Lateef drops from a 4-star to a 3-star. Like, I guess how much insight do you have on kind of why these decisions are made? Is it based on, because to me, I look at it, I go, okay, well, I don't know how much has changed. Like, what new information did we learn about these guys?
Yeah, I mean, usually when a guy gets changed, it's because we've had different guys who are like the scouts in our service who go to the camps and all that, who have watched them several times. It's not just one person's decision. It's usually, you know, there's various insights into it, and they're like, you know, this guy's not high enough. They've seen it with their own eyes. They've heard it from other people, and sometimes they think somebody's a little high. I think in Lateef's case, you know, it's not. I don't think it's a big alarm, but you know, he maybe just didn't have his best Elite 11 compared to some other guys, and that might be I think that's probably the start and end of it. And you know, to that I would say it's one camp. There's plenty of time for him to continue to show himself as a really good prospect, which he is. So I think that's maybe why he lost a little bit. And then Hammerbeck he's kind of a nice surprise because he's in that area where sometimes in recruiting rankings, a guy like him could fall through the cracks, if we're honest. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. You know, he's obviously, when he's gone to camps, he's impressed everybody everywhere he's went. Very versatile lineman who he's got the strength, yes, but he's also got incredible mobility for that size. And I think people just paired it all together in the measurables and said that's going to be a dude. So Nebraska was in on that before he was a 4-star. And you know, they liked all the same things our guys who did the ratings like. So I wasn't surprised that he got that, but it was well deserved. I'll say that.
So you don't just have like one guy sitting in a room that as soon as Colorado offers a kid, knocks him down a whole star rating?
I don't believe it works like that. No, but I know people like to throw that out there that's how it happens. I have never had, as you say, a part in the ratings. So once in a while, there will be a prospect where we'll throw our 2 cents in. You know, we'll just be like, you might take another look at this guy, see what you guys think about him, and that happens certainly on occasion. But a lot of that's out of our hands, which always makes it fun, of course, if a guy gets dropped and you got to answer questions for it when you're like, yeah, I didn't do that. So, but. So goes it. That's just one of the fun parts of the job.
So, BC, I am curious, though, because I know I make the joke about Colorado, but it does seem like more on the positive side than the negative side usually, where it's like, okay, a guy, and I think Coach Rules talked about this a little bit, like a guy picks up an Ohio State offer or he picks up a Georgia or Alabama offer. That does seem like, does that get kind of baked into like, oh, if these programs are all kind of sniffing at the door, like maybe we need to take another look at what this guy's rated?
You know, I can't speak for those guys, how much of that they do or don't do, but, you know, I mean, we're human. I'm sure if like the 8 to 10 top programs in the country are all looking at the same person, usually, first off, that guy's been on somebody's radar that's doing the ratings for a while anyway, because he's usually those type of prospects don't just come out of anywhere. So I don't know, though. I don't want to speak out of turn for those guys and how they do the process, because there's stuff I don't know about that you know, when they put it together. So I don't want to be unfair to them.
for sure. That's Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. So BC, as you're kind of listening to Garrett McGuire last night and him talk about some things there, one of the things that caught me kind of, I don't know if by surprise, but he had some very strong praise for Jamal Banks and even calling him a quarterback's best friend. Were you surprised at how, I guess, strongly he kind of went out there and stood on a limb for Jamal Banks?
No, Jamal Banks is huge for this team, and the first part is his skill set, because he's got that frame now where if you're in the red zone, you feel like you can put it up for him, and there's a better chance he's going to go get it than the other guy. He's got sort of that box out ability, just like to, I think, frame up a DB, and it's 3rd down and 5. You get your 8 yards, and he's got the better positioning, so he can bring that to the table. I think what that also does is it's going to open up more of the field for other guys. If you can get people like Banks and Fedoni sort of working that middle, or some of that intermediate part of the passing game, think about what it does for like Jalen Lloyd or Malachi or Isaiah Nayor. I think the guy can fly a little bit too. So he's got all the stuff you want. He's got the proven resume because he's had 2 seasons back-to-back at Wake Forest where he had 650 yards plus. And if you look within those numbers, like against Clemson, he had a game where he had about 150 yards one of those years. So, I mean, he's done it against good competition, too, the top type of teams and great athletes. So there's a lot to love. And then the fact that he's just a guy who came in right away and is mature and says, I'm part of the fabric of this thing. I'm going to be right in it. I'm going to be a leader. And he's been that from day one, from every, interview that we've done about him. And also I think he's got a good connection with Dylan Raiola. Let's not forget that when he visited in December before he made his final choice, Dylan threw with him. And that was a big deal because he saw that, okay, he's 18, but he's got some tools that not many 18-year-olds have, and I think it made a big impression on Banks, and surely that relationship has grown since then.
BC just spoke with Jamal Banks on Sunday and loved every single word that he said, just very charismatic and very mature, well-spoken man. But you don't have to say Jamal Banks because I'm asking this question, but who do you think will be the most impactful transfer this upcoming fall?
Ooh. Banks is certainly a good answer. He was the highest of the transfers we had on our indispensable list, but I think Nair is going to be right there with them. I think you could answer either of those guys because Isaiah Nayor's. I feel like if you look back at his resume in 2021, when he was, I know a few years ago with Wyoming, he's averaging like almost 20 yards per catch. And even in the spring game, he had that one. It's just one play, I know, but he took that crossing route, and you saw that he's one of those dudes who just has like that extra gear where you think he's going one speed, the DB thinks he's taking the angle and has him, and then no, he's going another speed actually all of a sudden, and he was gone. There was a flag on the play, so it didn't go in the stats and all that, but our eyes saw it. We all saw it. We're like, okay, that's nice. And I just love that combination of those two guys. Like, you couldn't have drawn it up much better as far as like, okay, we kind of like how our young guys are developing in this room, but what are like the 2 parts we could add that really make this thing take off and are a bridge to the future? You got a big sturdy guy in Banks, and Nair's not small either. Don't get me wrong. That guy, like when he came to the podium, you're like, oh, that's how they're supposed to look. But he's got maybe that speed component too a little bit more. It's just a nice combo. The interesting wild card to me is going to be Mazuka, to your question, Anna, on the O-line. Obviously people remember right away he was one of the guys who sort of Rule mentioned out loud, like you got to fit, you got to see how we're doing things here and kind of fit into that. And so he's had to maybe catch up with that. But you look at what he's done. I mean, he had really high PFF grades at Florida last year, obviously played at Baylor before that. That's a guy who's played a ton of football, also looks like a next-level player when you just see him in person. And so that's interesting, though, because Justin Evans has had a great offseason. Lutovsky's had a really good offseason. Corcoran, of course, is kind of floating at some spot, that could be in the rotation. There's going to be a good player or two on that O-line who's not starting, and so that's going to be really interesting to watch this camp.
BC, if you had to say today, who do you think is the starting offensive line?
I guess I'd say Mizuka's going to get in there, although I'm less like writing that in pen than everybody else, and maybe I'm stupid about it, but I'm going by what we saw in the spring, and I kept listening and hearing how they talk about Lutovsky and Evans. But I would say Prohaska left tackle. Let's see. I guess Mizuka, Scott, I think Evans, and Bryce. Maybe those five, but there could be one that's off there, honestly. Lutovsky's in that mix, and where they put Corcoran is I don't think Corcoran's going to be in the front five, but he's an interesting guy because he's played as much football as anybody, and he's back. So there's some good battles to be had this camp still, or where they want to, or which side they want to put certain guys to is an interesting part of it.
BC, speaking of battles, one name you didn't mention, Dante Dowdell. How do you think he fits into this running back room? Is it out of the question for him to be that RB1?
Well, you never know. And I say you never know because, let's go back a year ago. Emmett Johnson was, obviously there were injuries that impacted this, but he was fourth or fifth. If we had this conversation 365 days ago and I'd said Emmett Johnson's going to start for 2 months, you would have said you probably say this a lot of weeks anyway, don't have this guy on the radio anymore, but you definitely would have said that. I think it could be tough for one of those younger guys to emerge to the front right away because I think Emmett and Ramir and Gabe, we'll see how Gabe comes back fully from his injury as far as the football stuff. He was doing team activities in the summer. All those guys obviously have the experience advantage, and so I kind of put those three above everybody else. I'm putting Emmett at the top of the line until proven otherwise. I feel like he earned that last year. It's going to be a good competition. You're going to need three guys. But it's a good question you ask because somebody like Dowdell is probably going to be part of it at some point in the year. You know what I mean? There's going to be a point where you need another back, even if he starts as the fourth or fifth guy, to maybe give you something. And, Quentin Ives is somebody that we haven't seen a lot about, but, this coaching staff still says we believe in him. So that's one of those positions where even if you're a guy that's sort of off the map right now, maybe things are different by August 20th, when we're talking about it. We'll see.
BC, if Bly Hill hadn't gotten injured, would we be talking more about him in this conversation as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, to Anna's question earlier, he would be a fine answer, because as far as the best transfer, because he was, I think, in line to start with Tommy Hill coming out of the spring on the opposite side. And so he's not out for the season. It's just a matter of it's going to be a test for a guy who, first off, he hasn't played at this level. He's from St. Francis, PA, so this is a big step up. Secondly, he's got a weird timing deal now where, when he gets healthy, you're going to probably miss all of camp, and you're going to have to kind of come back just, right in the middle of it when guys already have played 3 or 4 games. That's not easy to do for, a veteran, let alone someone who's new to this level of football. So that's the only thing about this current season. But if you want to talk long-term as far as best transfer ads, he's up there. Sire Wright might prove that he's up there, as far as the transfer from USC and coming in late. Maybe he earned a job right away. So all those guys who they brought in from the portal, when you go through them, they can be heard from this season, and so that's obviously what you want out of that. Nebraska's not going into there just to get guys that sit around for a year or two. They're looking for difference makers right away.
Brian, what do you do with a guy like Sire Wright? I don't really know what to do with him. He didn't play last year really. I don't know what to do with him as a transfer. I understand there's some promise there and that kind of thing, but I'm just not really sure how to process him being on the team.
Yeah, I don't know either yet. You got to just see. You got to roll the ball out there and see what happens, in camp. And there's a lot of really interesting young guys in that secondary, and at least a couple of them who are first or second year players, I feel like have to be heard from. Like Jeremiah Charles, we all know what an athletic freak he is. Like, is this where you start to hear his name, or he pops up right away? I don't discount the really high IQ guys that are true freshmen from at least appearing on the 2 deep or on the fringe of the 2 deep. I know Caleb's doing really good stuff, and I'm not saying that because Damon's always on here. I mean, I know Caleb has jumped right in and is putting up good numbers. So I think there's if I'm a young defensive back or a newcomer over there, I love the situation because it's open to at least compete and put myself there. Like, that's all you can ask for. So maybe it's a guy like Sire, right? But maybe it's someone who's been in the system a year or two, and now it's their turn, like Jeremiah Charles, to rip it off and be a main guy.
Is the secondary the place that you've got the most unanswered questions on who actually is going to get playing time back there?
Just at the one spot. I'm curious about the one corner for sure, and then sort of like, who's the next wave behind all those vets we talk about all the time? Like, I mean, they can flip Hartzog to a corner if they wanted, but he was playing safety in the spring, actually. Mm-hmm. Singleton and, Buford is going to be really tough to keep off the field. I don't think you will. Mm-hmm. Gifford's obviously going to play a lot, and Tommy Hill. So you've got, like, that nice base of, like, 5 guys there. And then it's, to me, like, okay, who's like kind of 6 through 10 this year? That's really interesting, or maybe 5 through 10, I could say. So there is if the question though is going into the season, what is one concern spot you have in a defense that we all think is going to be pretty good? It's the one corner spot, and the reason I say that is it is going to have to be somebody that's a newer face, and they might be up for the job from week 1, but we can't play dumb here. I mean, Colorado, we say what you want about their program or this or that. They've got some skilled dudes who are going to test you in a primetime game, and you're going to have a guy with some mettle that's at one of those corner spots who's ready to step up to that moment. So that's going to be a real early test for a specific spot on this roster to show they're ready to roll, and we're going to know some things already by September 7th.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, we appreciate it. As always, we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Coming up next, we've got Andy Kendeigh from KETV here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, and we're brought to you by the Team Jack Foundation. Make sure you get to teamjackfoundation.org to find out everything you need to know to get involved with that great organization. All they're trying to do is find better treatments for kids with childhood brain cancer, and one day a cure. And the ways you can help are all on teamjackfoundation.org. You can volunteer, you can see what events are coming up, or you can just donate directly on the page. Get out to teamjackfoundation.org to get involved. Joining us now is Andy Kendeigh from KETV. AK, what's going on, man?
What's happening, guys? Good morning.
How are you feeling? You're back at work. How excited are you?
I can't tell you the last time I said I was excited to go back to work. It's been years. But it's been a fun re-entry. It's it took me about an hour to get my sea legs. I did have to have Matt Satilli give me a tutorial on how to edit. But after we got through the first couple hours, it was just like riding a bike, right?
They didn't have
to be back.
They didn't have to give you like a tour of the building or anything, remind you where your desk was, anything like that?
Well, it was weird because they gave me a name tag just in case people didn't know what it was. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I had to reintroduce myself to Rob and Julie and Bill, but no, it's been good. Everybody's been so nice, and I thank everybody for the nice messages, the text, the Twitter mentions, and all that stuff. It's been nice, and I tell you, the big winner in all this was my wife and kids, because they were ready for Dad to go back to work about a month ago, and so having me out of the house, I think they're still in full summer mode now.
So was there any, I don't know if you've ever like gone on an extended vacation and there's like that little moment of panic when you're trying to like get back in with your work badge and you're like, I do still work here, right? Like they didn't secretly fire me while I was gone. Did you have like any of that as you're going back in the building?
Well, I did. Well, the work badge worked fine. Where I had the biggest trouble was trying to turn on my computer. I'm not making this up. I had to go back to our IT computer guys, and I had to bring Spark out to my computer desk, and he had to actually go, okay, the on button is here, Andy. And then, of course, I forgot my password. And so, you got to change the passwords like every 10 minutes. So I had no idea. It was a rough reentry for the first hour. But once I got past and signed on my computer, I was like, oh, this is where the show rundowns are and all that stuff. But thankfully, I picked a really nice week to come back. There's very little going on in the sport. This is probably the slowest sports week of the year, right? I mean, it's got to be close. This is like catch your breath time. Yep. Unless you're a media outlet covering the SEC football landscape, this is kind of a catch your breath before the big sprint starts because, Indianapolis, the Huskers speak a week from today down at Lucas Oil, and Big Ten Media Days starts in 6 days. So it's going to be an interesting event. Lauren Michelson and myself will be going down for us, and we leave on Monday night, so we're there for all the festivities. It's going to be interesting because they've extended it now to 3 days to integrate the new Pac-12 teams that are entering the league. So it'd be going to be a different type of grouping of teams. It's going to be weird seeing UCLA, USC, Washington, and Oregon walking alongside some of the other blue bloods in the Big Ten. But I think it's time and to turn the page and start a new chapter of the Big Ten Conference. So is Big Ten Media Days going to be your first like event that you're covering since you're back? You kind of just taking it easy this week? Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much chained to the desk this week, and then next week will be a real test to see if I can. You know what else will be a test? It will be a test if I could sleep in a bed, because that's the biggest thing right now. Is because my back has been so bad. I've been sleeping on a couch. Oh. And it's just been easier to get up and down. But with every day, the back gets a little better, and so you don't have much choice when you're staying at one of the fine hotels in the greater Indianapolis area. So, that's going to be a big test for me. I'm more worried about that than covering Big Ten Media Days. How I'm going to get good rest, right? You mean you didn't spring for the suite that has the couch in it too?
Yeah, or pull-out bed.
No. I'll tell you, the prices for hotels, and anybody who's been looking down in Indianapolis to stay downtown, ridiculous. So, luckily, we were part of the media contingent. But I'll tell you, the biggest change, and maybe it's just growing old, is how klutzy I've become. I drop things. I spill my, Diet Cokes. I can't tell you how many times I've spilled my drink in the last 2 months. Yesterday, I had kind of tripped down the stairs. You ever do that where you get down to the last couple steps? Oh, yeah. If you're done with the steps? Yep. I did that yesterday, and I did not stick the landing. I thought I was on solid ground, and I was on step one, and I tripped, and my drag foot totally hyperextended. I am a mess right now. So I'm just lucky to get through the day. So I mean, I do think it. Well, let's blame it on the back issue and not getting old, because I do think that does affect the whole nervous system there. So it might take you a minute to kind of regain some of that coordination. You're not the athlete right now that you once were. I am definitely pointing the finger elsewhere, not the thumb. So. Yeah, if you can blame it on anything besides aging, I think you have to, right? Yeah, no question. We're gonna hold off this aging thing for as long as we can. I felt bad a little bit yesterday, Andy, because we did a golf tournament thing for we were invited by somebody we work with, and I'm like, and we're in the cart, right? So it's like we're walking 18. By the end, it's like, man, I'm really tired. I'm kind of exhausted. Well, how many swings did you take? That's the problem, right? Is I'm very bad at golf. So
even with the cart, there's quite a bit of walking to find the ball, and then there's a lot of swings. So that is a factor. You're not wrong.
Well, plus, yeah, you don't want to lose balls, so you're searching everywhere. And then once you're over there, you might as well search for extra balls just in case to kind of supplement what you have. So yeah, you're doing a lot of walking. And I'll tell you the other bummer about my hiatus is I missed Pinnacle Bank Media Days for golf last week.
Well,
so that was a huge bummer. I know you're having Gary Dev on, and I mean that's like one of the best parts of the summer. You get to play free golf, they feed you, and you get to play a course that normally you would never be able to even enter the clubhouses. So that was a big bummer. But hopefully next year I'll be back in golfing shape.
Well, I mean, the only thing you really missed was getting beat by our Hurrdat Sports team. So I think.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I guess they went off.
I heard all about it. Rob McCartney was telling me all about it on Grayson's squad.
Yeah, and, Grayson is a little bit of a ringer. He hit a hole-in-one yesterday. Yeah,
was that the hole with the was that the Clown's Mouth or the windmill hole?
No, he had the hole. He hit at number 5 on Iron Horse. He hit a hole-in-one.
Really?
Yeah, we were out there.
I will have to bring that up to Rob, huh?
Yeah,
so now you can't feel too bad.
Yeah, so at least he didn't do that to you or to the KETV crew last week.
That's true. I don't think the KETV squad was in any danger of threatening Grayson and the Hurrdat buddies because from what I heard, it was a pretty workmanlike trip around the golf course, even with the best ball format or whatever scramble format.
Yeah, Kyle's good too, but Grayson's just a ringer. He may have been hired just for events like this. I don't actually even.
Work here?
I actually don't even know.
Well, I've known companies to do such things, whether it be company softball teams or golf squads. I mean, these are serious business, but Grayson's got game. I do know that. Rob was telling me the other day that he said that asking Gray about his game, and he said, "Yeah, I felt okay. I ripped the drive on 3. It went about 350." And Rob's like, "Are you kidding?" And Rob's I gotta tell you, Rob and Bill Ramby are really good golfers, and if Rob can still swing it, but man, Grayson's a real deal.
Yeah, I don't know where he learned how to do that. Apparently, he was also a tennis pro at some point.
Oh yeah,
so
he's great. He's a great tennis player.
I don't really understand just how anybody's that good at everything. It makes me a little bit mad, as I'm just out there hacking away, at Iron Horse. After about 9 holes, I'll be honest, I was like, yeah, I probably just 9's probably enough for me.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm the designated putter whenever we do the scramble, so it's all right.
There you go.
And as I told Rob, I said, thank goodness your kid's got athletic genes from their mother. So it's all good. Thank you for sharing.
Well, Andy, that was a typical July segment. There's not a lot going on, but we are super happy that you're back at work and feeling better every day. And some of us will see you out in Indy next week.
Sounds great. Can't wait, you guys. It's good to talk to you, and have a good week.
Thanks. We appreciate it, Andy. That's Andy Kendeigh from KETV. He's back at it after a little hiatus there, so we are super happy for him. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little baseball, see what Steve Gardner from the USA Today has in mind for the second half of the Major League Baseball season. Well, the unofficial second half, as we're in All-Star break week here. We'll have more of Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube as well. It's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by Steve Gardner. He's a baseball writer for USA Today. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Ravi. How are you doing?
We're doing great this morning. How are you doing on your little couple-day break from regular season baseball? How are you feeling your time?
Well, there's a lot of baseball prep to get ready for the second half, and we're looking at the playoff races. We're looking at the trade deadline coming up. Still lots of stuff to get ready for and psyched for in the second half of the season.
Ooh, so you're speaking my language with trade deadline here. What is kind of the most interesting potential storyline that you're kind of keeping an eye on, whether it's somebody maybe being an unexpected buyer, unexpected seller, a player you think might move? Like, what's some of the juice you're starting to maybe keep an eye on for the trade deadline?
Well, I think it's as always, it's pitching that is the main focus at the trade deadline. And, a couple of all-stars who were at the game last night could potentially be traded. I know, because we sports writers don't have a whole lot of game stuff to talk about, and we can throw rumors around all the time. That's perfect all-star break fodder. But Garrett Crochet and Mason Miller both were very impressive last night, throw the ball very hard, and both play for two very bad teams. And, the Oakland A's could kind of, refocus their future by trading Miller to a contender. Anybody would love to have a guy coming out of the bullpen that throws 100-plus miles per hour. And Crochet, same sort of thing, throws really hard, is having a fantastic season for the lowly Chicago White Sox. And, that could be a kickstart for a rebuild, perhaps, for Chicago. So those guys, I think, are probably the most desirable trade candidates. There were some rumors about Tarek Skubal of the Detroit Tigers, and Detroit may make him available, or it's probably more teams would love to have him than it is the Tigers would make him available. But I think that's really the main story, who gets pitching, because everybody needs pitching.
So, Steve, let me ask you, out of the teams that are currently either leading their divisions or in places to win a wild card, who needs the most help? Like, who are you looking at and say they have to do something in order to maintain their spot in the playoffs? I think one of the teams that fits that bill, maybe more than any other, is one that doesn't need pitching, and that's the Seattle Mariners. They had a 10-game lead at one point early on in the first half, and that's been whittled down to one game at the break. The Houston Astros are nipping at their heels, and Seattle has maybe one of the best starting rotations in all of baseball, but just lacking in offense. And I think that's where Jerry DiPoto and company need to kind of mine the trade market. Maybe there's not as much demand for guys that can come in and they can plug into the lineup and provide some offensive spark. So I think Seattle kind of has to make a deal, because, this is a franchise that has had a long storied history of not going well in going far into the postseason. So, I think they would probably be at the top of my list. Who's the best potential bat that you think might be available to a team like Seattle?
Well, I thought at one point, just a few weeks ago, before the New York Mets got on the role that they were on, is that Pete Alonso was the slam dunk best bat that could be available. Now, I don't know. It's hard to say who could be available. You'd look at perhaps the Chicago Cubs, sitting in last place in the National League Central. Would they make Cody Bellinger available? If so, I think he would be a fantastic fit, for Seattle, because they have outfield, pretty well covered with Julio Rodriguez there in center field, but Bellinger plays a pretty mean first base, and that's certainly an area of need for Seattle.
So let me ask you about my Boston Red Sox here, because I'm biased, obviously. They all of a sudden are playing pretty good baseball. I think they're 18-7 in their last 25, which I think is best in baseball over that stretch. Did something click? Did something change? Like, what have you seen from them where they've been able to kind of go on this run, or is it just kind of one of those like, if you pick any stretch in a baseball season, somebody will look good that probably isn't very good?
Yeah, it's one of those things too. You're exactly right that in baseball, a lot of times you will play much worse than you actually are, or much better. But the Red Sox, I think, have gotten really good pitching all season long, and the hitting has sort of come around, and maybe nobody embodies that more than your All-Star Game MVP in Jarren Duran, who's having a fantastic season. You gotta love it.
Yeah,
you're a Red Sox fan.
Yeah, you do. I wasn't pegging Duran as the All-Star Game MVP when the season started. That is certainly true. I gotta ask one more Red Sox related question, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Anna here, because she's got some.
I got some burning Royals questions.
Some pressing Royals things she's got off her chest. But if the Red Sox were to make a move at the deadline, where is it? You think another bat makes the most sense? You think shoring up the bullpen a little bit? Like what can take them from like, oh, they, maybe they're the last team that makes the playoffs to like, oh, they could actually be dangerous in October?
Yeah, I mean, everybody would love to add some depth to the bullpen. So I think that's a given. They would like, Tristan Casas coming back, I think would be a big help in terms of getting another bat in the lineup. But yeah, at this point, just maybe to get an infielder. David Hamilton has been pretty good. Kind of a surprise there at second base. So maybe somebody who can play second base, shortstop, somewhere in there, because that's kind of been a revolving door for the Red Sox. But otherwise, you're right. They have been quite a surprise in the surge that they made at the end of the first half, and only 3.5 games behind the Yankees in the division and 4.5 behind the Orioles. That's a solid record.
All right, we got to turn the page to the Kansas City Royals, team I followed the most closely, Steve here. But 5-5 in the last 10. They're sitting at 7 games behind first in the AL Central. But do you still see a path for them to make the playoffs, whether that's winning that pennant or also getting that wild card?
Certainly, the Royals have a shot at the playoffs. If you're above 500 in the new playoff format, the expanded format that they grew a couple of years ago, you've got a shot. Now, the question is, how much are they going to be able to leapfrog first the Twins in second place and then get close to the Guardians? That's a good question in terms of talent. And MJ Melendez just went on the injured list. So that's going to be another hurdle they'll have to clear. I think this is a team that whose offense kind of goes along with if Bobby Witt and Salvador Perez are hitting, then they're pretty good. Otherwise, they could be susceptible to some long slumps. It's the pitching that's carrying them so far with Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans, as you well know, and getting Michael Wacha back certainly helps. I think that's been one of the things. And Hunter Harvey, they did make a trade before we went into the break. And I think that says that the management there is committed to making the team better. So potentially we could see more deals from the Royals as the trade deadline gets closer. And I think it would be a big step forward to get this team back into the playoffs and get people thinking that, this is a competitive team that we're building and one that could be playoff team year in and year out down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kansas City has to be buyers come trade deadline. I also wanted to bring up the MLB draft and the pick of Jack Caglione and just your thoughts there because, I mean, there's a lot of skeptics of Jack Caglione and his swing and miss, but I think there's a huge upside to drafting a guy like that who I think can climb the ranks pretty quickly throughout the minors and, make his way to Kansas City sooner rather than later. But what's the national perspective on Jack Caglione?
I think, for a guy that was talked about as one of the top prospects coming into this season in the college ranks and into the draft, to fall to Kansas City, they have to feel really, really good that they were able to get him at their draft spot. And, I wonder, just throwing it out there, that if, he was drafted as a two-way player, and if that was a potential deal breaker, if he wanted to pitch and hit for other teams higher up. So if so, that's wonderful for the Royals. And, the fact that his bat could certainly get him to Kansas City, maybe as soon as next season. Vinny Pasquantino has had an okay tenure, but nothing special. You get somebody with Caglione's, prospect pedigree and raw talent level, I think he could certainly make a difference there in Kansas City. So you've got to be very, very pleased with the way the draft went.
Steve, we appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the second half of the baseball season. I'm sure we will catch up with you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That's Steve Gardner from USA Today. He's a baseball writer. Coming up next, though, might be second half of baseball season time, but we are getting closer and closer to college football. I've got some college football questions for Anna. We will get to that and so much more as we get into the final hour here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're back here for hour number 3 on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Also KFOR in Lincoln for this third hour. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, and we're brought to you by our friends at Union Omaha. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get tickets for their upcoming match Saturday, July 27th at Warner Park. That's a 7 p.m. start, just a week from Saturday against Chattanooga. You can also check out their shop on there, get any news you need as well, and check out the upcoming schedule. Just in case Saturday doesn't work for you, I'm sure there's a date on there that does. Make sure you check out unionomaha.com for all your Union Omaha needs. All right, Anna, I've got some questions for you.
Okay.
About college football. Number 1, I want to talk Heisman Trophy odds. Dylan Gabriel. Oregon now. He's been a couple places. Has a hard time staying a little bit healthy. It's now your Heisman favorite.
Wow.
Plus 750, which is actually a pretty long shot at this point in the process for the favorite to be. But I don't necessarily want to talk about Dylan Gabriel. I want to talk about somebody else whose Heisman odds I looked up.
No. I already know where this is going.
I was just curious if he was on the list at all. And he was, according to FanDuel. One, Dylan Raiola. It's at plus 10,000 odds to win the Heisman. So they're way up there, right?
Okay.
He's in the category. He's in the same neighborhood as like Trevor Etienne. He's in the same neighborhood as Dante Moore, who's going to be Dylan Gabriel's backup, ironically enough, at Oregon. Alex Orji, who we think is going to be the starter at Michigan, but nobody's sure. Arch Manning, who I don't really know if he's even starting or not.
Still on the list.
He's on the list. He's plus 12,000, so he's a little bit further back than our guy Dylan Raiola. But I'm not going to pretend like I think Dylan Raiola is going to win the Heisman here. Okay. Here's what I want to ask you though, because I've asked a couple people this over the last couple days, and I'm just wondering if you've allowed yourself to entertain the idea of what if he actually is awesome. What if he actually is, like, have you allowed yourself to go to that place? Because I know a lot of Husker fans are, like, very pessimistic. They're like, oh, we can't have nice things. I heard it last week when Evan Cooper resigned, or a week and a half ago at this point, whatever it was. And they're like, oh, see, we can't have nice things. Everything's going great. And then, it all hits the fan and it's all terrible. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about the idea that, like, what if he just is who he's supposed to be, right? Like, instead of being, oh, watch, we'll get the 1 5-star that's not any good, or, this is Nebraska, we'll screw it up somehow.
Starling.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, he's going to go play baseball, whatever, right? And then we just sit there and be like, oh, man, I hope he doesn't get injured or whatever, right? Have you allowed yourself to just think, like, what if he just is who he's supposed to be and he's awesome?
That's a beautiful question.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Where does your mind go when you kind of start going down that path?
I'm a hype beast for sure. Like, give me the Heisman odds. Like, now that you say that, I'm gonna go over to Iowa and put a $5 bet down on that. Thanks, Ravi, for letting me know the odds. But no, I mean, I'm all about it. I think innocent until proven guilty here.
Right.
Like, he is what I think he is until he proves us wrong.
Right.
Also is what people, like, yes, he hasn't proven anything, but he hasn't done anything wrong either.
It's not like we saw him in the spring game and we're like, oh, God, this is terrible.
There's been zero indication that he won't live up to the standard, but obviously you have to see how things play out, and you can't put that pressure on him, of course, and no 18-year-old kid should, be told, all right, you're going to be the Heisman or bust sort of thing. And that's not how it is. And I appreciate that Husker fans are apprehensive to wanting to jump on the train immediately and say, all right, Natty, we're going to the college football playoff because Dylan's going to save us this freshman season. Well, there's going to be some learning curves, and we will see that, because that's a huge adjustment from no matter where you play in high school. I don't care if it's IMG, I don't care if it's Elkhorn South or wherever you are.
Yeah.
There is an adjustment between high school and college, the level of play, the physicality, the speed of things, how you're getting play calls, especially now you're going to hear him in the helmet too. It's going to be a lot different than what he's used to, but I still think there's a huge upside of Dylan, and anybody that I've talked to about him, and I mean, I spoke with Garrett McGuire, who, we've heard multiple times throughout the show. just about what makes him so good. And the one thing he told me is it's what's between the ears. And I love that so much. It's his mind. It's his IQ of the game, and that's something that you can't take away.
Yeah.
Which is what I think is huge. Like, you can say legs, you can say arm, you can say power, whatever, but you can't take away his football IQ and his ability to read situations and, make different reads on the field. And that's what I think we didn't have with Husker football in the past quarterbacks that have gone through the system, is just that high football IQ, that true quarterback that can sit in the pocket, but also, be mobile on his feet. I think you're going to see a lot of Dylan Raiola in just his versatility, but also I think it's fair to be excited and be hyped for him, because when's the last time that we've been excited about a quarterback in Nebraska is Adrian Martinez coming in freshman season. And I would say this is even more. Adrian, probably a 4-star out of high school? Was he a 5?
He was a 4-star out of high school. And so this is probably close to, I would say it's close to what we felt about Adrian going into his sophomore year, right? Because we had seen it for a year. And then he was like 3rd in Heisman odds going into his sophomore year. People were expecting a lot out of him. So that, I think, is probably similar hype-wise to what we're experiencing with Dylan right now, is what we expected in year 2 from Adrian Martinez. And that's been 5 years now. It's been a minute. And, it kind of just felt like I think that's part of the apprehension, right? Is last time we got really jacked up about a quarterback, it kind of fizzled out on us, and we weren't able to see that really through to its fruition. I mean, and I kind of think that actually might help Dylan, right? Because if he's and not that he can't handle the pressure, but if we're in a different situation as a fan base where, let's say Adrian Martinez's career goes differently or whatever, right? The last couple quarterbacks Taylor Martinez, even if you want to go all the way back, after his first 4 or 5 games as a freshman,
he looks like a Heisman winner.
Yeah, I mean, he was talked about as somebody that could be in that conversation, and people were like, "Oh God, this is incredible." And then he never matched that again, right? He had moments, but he never had a stretch of his career that was that again. And so I think that, kind of trauma is aggressive as far as the term, but you know what I mean, like that experience of kind of getting let down and getting your hopes up and kind of getting your heart broken about these quarterbacks has caused us to be so apprehensive about Dylan that, I mean, how many times have you heard people say, it's like, if he's just average, they're going to win 8 games, right? Like, that's the expectation for Dylan Raiola right now.
If he just doesn't turn the ball over and simply completes passes.
Like, how many times has DB just said, like, I just want him to be able to play catch?
Yeah.
Right? We're not talking about him being Mahomes. We're talking about him just being a functional Division I quarterback, right? Which, no hate to anybody that played quarterback last year, Nebraska did not have last year, right? I actually think Heinrich Haarberg might be a functional Division I quarterback this year with his growth.
100%.
Like, I'm really big Heinrich Haarberg guy, and I'm not terrified of him being the backup the way some people are. I think it's actually good to have a guy with experience, and I think he keeps getting better, right? But how many times have you just heard, like, oh, he's just got to play catch. You just got to have functional quarterback play. Just has to be average, and they win 8 games. Like, that's the easiest spot in the world if you're Dylan Raiola to – I'm sure it's probably one of the few times that his expectations for himself and his coaching staff's expectations for themselves are probably higher than they are publicly. And that's super rare for a 5-star quarterback coming. I mean, look at Arch Manning, right? Like, he's not even the starter, and people's expectations are higher for him than I think Nebraska fans' expectations are for Dylan. It's kind of wild.
I know, because, I mean, you talk expectations. Imagine Dylan in this situation at Georgia where, they're used to being a national championship contender every single year. And now you go to a place where it's obviously in the middle of a rebuild.
It's like, hey, let's get to a bowl game.
Right, and he realizes, I think, the expectations are lower here. Obviously, that's not everything that went into that decision, but I still think that's a huge, weight off of his shoulder. Yes, there is a ton of pressure with being a quarterback in the state of Nebraska just because, this is everything in Nebraska, right? But it's everything everywhere, too, in the SEC. Anywhere you go, football is it in America. So I think he sees the pressure maybe is a little bit less, and again, with the fans' apprehension to quarterback play, because I think Husker fans, I mean, to put it bluntly, are just used to inconsistent quarterbacks.
Yeah.
and that's just kind of been the standard.
Even the good ones in the past have been inconsistent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Taylor Martinez. He still had issues with turnovers and fumbles and injuries. Toe turf toe. Is that what it is?
Turf toe.
Turf toe.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Toe turf also.
Toe turf. I mean, it's turf in the toe.
Hey, it won't be a problem for much longer. They're getting grass.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Turf toe is not related to artificial
Not
turf.
related. Yeah. Still can get it. But I think there was an inconsistency at quarterback that fans kind of just dealt with and got used to. So, I mean, you bring in Dylan Raiola, 5-star QB with all these expectations, and even if he is average, I think that's better than some of the other options that have been in the past 5 years. But again, you still got to see the play. No one can say Heisman or bust for any year of his career at Nebraska. But I think ultimately that is the goal for him to be in contention for the Heisman race. I don't think that's a broad or bold statement to make about Dylan.
I think there's going to be some ups and downs, right? He's a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be perfect. But what I think you're going to see is really high upside. And I think the downside, the inconsistencies are going to be more like freshman mistakes and not what on earth are we doing here, right? I think that's kind of the frustration with the quarterback position at Nebraska in the last, I guess, couple years. Not as much with Casey Thompson, but if you kind of skip the Casey year before that with Adrian and then Jeff Sims and Heinrich and Chuba last year, it's just we don't even understand what we're watching half the time, where it's like, well, how do you fumble in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
How do you not catch a snap in that situation? It's not even like, oh, he was a freshman, he trusted his arm a little bit too much, tried to squeeze it into a window he couldn't make it into. I feel like Nebraskans can live with those types of like taking chances or taking risks on something, and then because those are things you can learn from. When you're sitting there and you can't figure out, hey, it's 3rd down against Michigan, and if we get this first down or just don't turn it over, we're winning this game, and then you fumble somehow, that to me is the stuff where we're just like, how does this even happen, right? So if you just even eliminate the stuff that doesn't even make sense, then you're in a spot where it's like, yeah, you can still have some leeway to make mistakes and to take risks and to have your kind of freshman learning moments and mistakes, and still be in a place where Nebraska is in a dramatically better position at quarterback than they have been in the last. I mean, it's not like Tommy Armstrong was super consistent either. I mean, we love Tommy, and he's doing great stuff with the Beef, winning back-to-back titles there. But he had some inconsistencies too, both with injuries and actual play on the field too. You're going back 12 years of kind of inconsistent quarterback play. If you want to go all the way back to the. I mean, guess longer than that, because before Taylor Martinez, you had a couple rough years too. So
yeah, I mean, who is the last elite great quarterback in Nebraska history?
Elite's aggressive. The last quarterback I felt good about was Joe Gans, I think, on a consistent basis.
You wouldn't say elite though.
No.
Who is the last elite Nebraska quarterback?
I mean, probably Eric Crouch.
Yeah.
Now, Zach Taylor did win Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. I would have a hard time calling him elite, but like the numbers and accolades would lend themselves to that. So I don't want to disparage Zach Taylor at all here. Shout out to Cincinnati Bengals head coach Zach Taylor.
There you go, yeah.
But
he's doing all right.
He's doing all right. He's got a pretty good quarterback in his own right if he can keep him on the field. But yeah, Zach, I mean, it's been. I mean, Gans was 08, 07, 08.
I have a Joe Gans signed football.
I love Joe Gans. That was
my first autograph ever.
I was a huge Joe Gans guy. I thought he should have.
Great name.
Incredible name. I thought he should have played over Sam Keller when they brought Sam Keller in from Arizona State. I was just a big Joe Gans guy for no apparent reason. I had no reason to be. But he was probably the last quarterback that I felt consistently good about at Nebraska. And that's at least 15 years ago. That's too long to not have a quarterback that you...
I know, I'm trying to think back of...
Like, there was... because you had Taylor started in 2010, I think.
Taylor?
So you had 4 or 5 games in 2010 where you felt okay. And then it was up and down the rest of the Taylor Martinez experience. And then you go Tommy Armstrong, which he had some injuries and had some... Nick Baugh used to always call him the Tommy Armstrong YOLO balls, right? Where... he would kind of just toss it down there.
somewhere.
Yeah. It was kind of except for he didn't have Trey Palmer.
Yeah, Westerkamp. Yeah.
So, F it, Westerkamp's down there somewhere, right? And so, you had that, and that was always kind of like living on the edge with Tommy there. And then you go right into Adrian, I think, right after that. And you had a one really good year with Adrian as a freshman, and then after that, it was, where's the guy that we saw as a freshman? So you had 3 years of just waiting for this guy to be who he looked like he could be as a freshman, and you never got there. That's the list. That's that's the whole list of quarterbacks that started full time. Like, not throwing like Ron Kellogg and stuff in there, right? But that's the full list of everybody that started full time since Joe Gans. I think. I don't think I'm missing anybody. I mean, you had like Zach Lee, which we're not even gonna talk about. Like, that's not necessary, right? Like, you had that.
Zach who?
Exactly, Bo. You had that 09 team. I think Zach Lee was the starting quarterback there, which was just one of the worst offensive. Like, that was an Iowa offense.
Sue, though, so.
Yeah, but you had Ndamukong Suh, who was just like, hey, we'll take care of everything on this side of the ball. But I mean, it's been, and in the moment, I don't know that anybody besides me felt that good about Joe Gans. Like, I liked Joe Gans.
You're the biggest Joe Gans fan in the world.
Yeah, I was just
if Joe Gans had no fans, you'd be dead.
Yeah, like I was just standing for Joe Gans out there, and like I think it's probably. I mean, you're talking a minimum 15 years of, and that's over the course of 4 different head coaches now: Callahan, Pelini, Frost, Riley. No, it's 5 head coaches now.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the issue.
Yeah,
you can talk quarterbacks all you want, but if you don't have a consistent coach, then.
Well, and Sip was talking about it yesterday, right? When you start getting that revolving door of coaches going on, you're kind of asking for mediocrity. They've weirdly had a lot of consistency at quarterback in the sense that they've had 3 guys in that time span basically be 3 to 4 year starters, 3.5 year starters at least. And that hasn't weirdly helped that much, which is pretty unusual if you think about it. For a guy to start that long and no one feel that good about it. Like, when I can't think of any other situations where that's, I mean, I remember one at Florida State back in like 2001, but that's about, like, Chris Ricks at Florida State started for 4 years, and he actually had a very similar career to Adrian Martinez, right? Where really, really good as a freshman. I think he won freshman ACC Freshman of the Year, and then he just never got any better, right? And whether that's injuries, and Adrian kind of had some issues with injuries and what was going on around him, but you're kind of just sitting there and you go, you're a Nebraska fan. You're like, okay, hey, we're going to have 3-4 years of a guy and not ever feel that good about it. That's a super strange place to be as a fan base. And I just don't even know, like, I don't even know until they see, whether it's Dylan Raiola or whoever, kind of break that trend. Like, I don't even know how you get people out of that mindset. It's such a weird place to be.
What's Sanders on that list?
Who? Shedeur? Let's see here.
On the Heisman.
On the Heisman list. He is plus 4,000.
Okay, yeah, so he's got a hell of a lot of expectations of him this year.
Does, and a lot. So that kind of reminds me. So NCAA football came out this week, right? And Travis Hunter got a little preview copy of it, which I think Travis Hunter's on this list too. Yeah, he's plus 6,000. But somebody's asking Travis Hunter on live as he's playing this game. He goes, "Hey, is the offensive line play for Colorado accurate?" And he goes, "Yeah." I think he said, "Yeah, they're trash," or "Yeah, it's trash." And so I don't know if he was just trolling the guy he was playing with or whatever. But if that doesn't get fixed, plus 4,000 for Shedeur Sanders is way too low.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
I don't think that's going to work at all. And also, I don't think Shedeur is going to win on like a 5-7 team. I don't think he's winning the Heisman. And I don't know that Colorado is going to be that much better than about 5-7 this year.
I think it'll be interesting to see the difference between Colorado and Nebraska's record come the end of the year. Because I think this will answer a lot of people's questions that everyone wanted to ask last year of transfer portal or bust for Sanders versus doing it from development ground up with Matt Rule.
Yeah, the quick fix versus the slow build.
Yeah, the quick versus the slower build. So I think this will be not a tell-all year, because I think you got to give coaches like 3 to 4 years to really see what they're building. But I think it'll say a lot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, because I remember last year when, after Nebraska lost to Colorado, people kind of freaking out a little bit. It's like, hey, Colorado was like the worst team in in Power 5 football before Deion took over, and now they're beating Nebraska. And like, why?
Excuse us, Coach Prime. We should be saying Coach Prime.
Never. And only sarcastically if I ever use it.
My man.
And how, like, well, why can't Nebraska do it fast? And why didn't we get the guy that can do a fast build and whatever? And then at the end of the year, Nebraska has a better record than Colorado. Mm-hmm. I know it's only by one game, and I know it's really hard to sit there and swallow the fact that, it's a tough pill to swallow to be like, well, yeah, we still lost to that team, right? One of their 4 wins was to Nebraska. But I don't know. There's not a snowflake's chance in hell that I'd rather be in Colorado shoes than Nebraska's right now. That whole situation is, and listen, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll win games. That whole situation feels like a giant dumpster fire just waiting to ignite. Mm-hmm. It just,
I love it.
It smells to high heavens and doesn't make any bit of sense for what I believe to be true about how to build teams, right? Like, he's just got a bunch of mercenaries in there. Doesn't even have that many of them. And if you look at the transfers and the classes he brought in, like, yeah, he's got a handful of high-end talent, and that's about it. And if we're talking about football, we always say football is the ultimate team game. Well, Deion's putting that to the test because he's betting that his 4 or 5 top guys can beat your next, like, 5 through 20. They're all better than his. That's what we're testing here. Is Shedeur and Travis and who's the offensive? They got a true freshman 5-star offensive lineman whose name's escaping me right now. But like, you got a handful of these super high end guys. He said maybe 3 or 4 first rounders, and I'll take his word for it. Right? There's 2 for sure. If he's got 4 first rounders and then nobody else that gets drafted, where does that get you? Like, that's the interesting conversation that is going to happen around Colorado this year, because they do have high end talent at a couple spots, and the most important spot at quarterback, right? What do you do if the offensive line is as bad as it looks like on NCAA football? Like, what if it's as bad as Travis Hunter thinks it is? Right? That's the part where you go, hey, yeah, I'll take my chances with Matt Rule over whatever it looks like at Colorado when Deion doesn't have any more kids to play quarterback.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Like, that's the $1 million question.
Ravi is a hater for sure.
Oh, I do not like Deion Sanders even a little bit.
I wonder what Colorado radio shows say about Nebraska.
They probably just wish they could be us, They just like they hate us because they ain't us, if I had to guess. No, it would be interesting, but I also am interested to see if Deion can win any games with anyone who's not related to him starting at quarterback, because he hasn't yet. I mean,
we'll find out in September.
That's true.
Under the lights at Memorial.
That's the truth of the matter. That's the truth of the matter. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Gary Java. He's the sales manager for the Pinnacle Bank Championship. We are getting closer and closer to that wonderful week in August. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll have more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by Gary Java. He's the sales manager for the Pinnacle Bank Championship. Gary, how are you this morning? I'm doing great, Ravi, and I just wanted to say, Damon, you never sounded better. But I hope your voice changes by opening day. I'm sure it'll drop a couple octaves by then. Anna, you sound great. You sound smooth. You sound like you've done this a million times before. And go Mavs. Hey, I appreciate that. Thanks, Gary. Gary, so I learned something this morning, because you are a guy that's done this kind of a million times before. I didn't realize that my producer, Sugar Shane over here, was your producer back in the day as well. Heck yes. And then we couldn't afford to keep him. And he moved on to greater things like you guys. If there was such a thing as keeping me in line when I was over-caffeinated and younger, Shane was able to do that. Well, come on, Shane. That's his job with me now. I do. His salary demands are exorbitant, so I know exactly what you mean.
Just a great guy. You know, there's just people in your life, and as you get older and different things that you do, there's just those people that you know. I don't care what the role is. That's somebody you want on your team, and I always call them Shane Gang. Shane Gang is one of those guys you always want on your team.
100%. We're glad he's on our team for sure. But let's talk about the team that you're a part of over there at the Pinnacle Bank Championship. We're just a few weeks away. Is this thing creeping up on you a little bit?
You know, it does, and it doesn't. I'll tell you, when things start moving, like we're making plans to quote unquote drop the trailers. Our great partner, Samson Construction, our executive trailers that they put out at the golf course. Once we know they're going in, we're moving out, and we're at the golf course. We're at the club at Indian Creek for 2 months. So the week before 4th of July, things start dropping out here, and that's when you go, okay, here we go. Enjoy 4th of July weekend and no more days off till Labor Day.
Man, so there's, you know, as you're talking about dropping trailers and stuff out there, there's so much that goes on out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship. Even when you're out there and you're just kind of like, okay, and you don't really understand the magnitude of the job that you guys do to get this event to the place that it is every year. And I just have to, you know, just to, I guess, give you your kudos. It's incredible how it looks every year and goes off without a hitch.
Well, thanks for noticing, and thanks for saying that. And it has nothing to do with me. Our tournament director, Jessica Braybeck, has been with us all 8 years. Jessica and I we started in 2016 for our 2017 inaugural Pinnacle Bank Championship. So between Jessica, our tournament director, and this year our new director of operations, Marion High School's own Amelia Hansen, just getting everything taking care of all those moving parts and all the details. When you start, if you could come out and see our parking lot, the parking lot out here at the club, it's and just all the pieces and the parts and the metal and the glass, and just watch it going back and forth in the parking lot out to the 18th green and out to our par 3 17th hole. By the way, the frame is now up, and the carpet has been laid on our NMC rental pavilion on the east side of the 18th green. That was just done yesterday, and things are really coming together. And I don't know how they do it. It's kind of like a magic act. I don't want to know how you do it. I just sit back and I try to do my job. Me and our director of sales, Brett Allen.
So, Gary, as you're...
by the way, before I forget, I'm sorry, Ravi.
No, go ahead.
Before I forget, I guess I should don't bury the lead. August 5th through 11th. August 5th is our Monday Pro-Am, and throughout the week, our tournament play starts Thursday, August 8th, championship Sunday, August 11th. So I mentioned we're a couple weeks away, but those are the dates to keep in mind. And don't forget RSM Youth Day on Saturday, August 10th. Come on and come all and bring the kids.
So, Gary, I assume there's still tickets available for all the fine folks in Omaha to come out and see you.
Heck yes. You know, I should have said, yeah, Jessica's in the other end of our office trailer, executive trailer, and I should say, no, we're all sold out. No, absolutely. Go to the Pinnacle Bank Championship.com. You can purchase individual tickets there, grounds tickets, and clubhouse tickets, which allows access to the Indian Creek Clubhouse, which is otherwise during the tournament closed to the public. So that's an extra perk. Those are available there. People can still register and sign up to be a volunteer and be a part of Nebraska's only annual professional sports event. I got to get that in. College World Series is the only annual college sports event, and we're the only annual professional sports event in the state of Nebraska. So you can be a part of that as a volunteer, as a fan, and there's only 4 days of professional golf tournament, Corn Ferry Tour action in the state, and we've got those 4. It's great to be a part of.
So, Gary, I know my favorite spot's over at 17 on the Hurrdat Harbor over there. What's one of the
Heck yes.
What's one of the things that you like about the championship that is that's outside of the golf? I know you've got a ton of features out there. That's why all that construction's going on with all the metal and glass you were talking about. What's one of the things you like doing when you're out there as you're spending your time out that week?
You know what I like the most is, well, like I call it in the sales business and political business, I guess, shaking hands and kissing babies. going out and saying hello and thank you to our great partners, our great sponsors, those who have been with us in the past, those who are new with us, and their guests and their clients, their prospects, their employees. It's a great opportunity for businesses. For business development, client relations, we said prospecting, networking, employee relations, which has become pretty important in the business world since 2020. It's just a great way to go out and see people enjoying 4 days of professional golf at one of the players' favorite courses on the entire Korn Ferry Tour.
Well, and even if you're not a huge golf fan, there's still plenty to do out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship, right? It's just a nice way to spend a couple days outside in Omaha, right?
Absolutely. I say, sometimes I hear people say, well, I'm not really a golfer, or, our CEO isn't a golfer. So how many people go to the College World Series, never wore metal cleats in your day? It never played hardball or whatever. You go, it's a great event, and unlike other events, you can move around, walk around. You can go out and grab a drink, whether it's at public concessions or whether it's at one of the sponsors at one of the indoor-outdoor pavilions. Grab a cocktail, grab something to eat, and go out for a walk on the nicest park that you're going to get to walk in. The beautiful course here at the club at Indian Creek. Just go out and enjoy the day, enjoy the weather, enjoy a few holes. Follow certain golfers, or just stand in a spot and watch how different groups are playing that same hole, and it's just a great way to spend the day.
Gary, I couldn't have put it better myself. We appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing you again in a couple weeks here.
I look forward to you guys. Anna, keep it up. Ravi, I'm happy for you and proud of you. You've come a long way since the last time we spoke out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship last year. August 5th through 11th at the club at Indian Creek.
Gary, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
That's Gary Java. He's the sales manager for the Pinnacle Bank Championship. We will be out there all week. It's going to be good. I'm excited.
And not only is it fun for the adults, it's also fun for the kids, too.
Yeah.
Bring the whole family. But also, if you want to leave the kids at home, you can have a time out on the golf course, too.
There is, I believe I was told, I believe Jessica told me they were bringing these back. There's boozy snow cones out there. Wow. So if you want to maybe
fun
have
for everyone.
Maybe you want to have grandma and grandpa take care of the kids for a second. Just come out, hang out, get some boozy snow cones, have a good time. Come hang out with us at the Hurrdat Harbor. Gotta get tickets though. Get tickets for Hurrdat Harbor.
Get your tickets.
But it'll be a good time out there. All right, coming up next, we will wrap up the show. We'll see if DB can join us. If not, we've got plenty to talk about here still on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's Anna Bellinghausen. I'm Ravi Lulla, and we're brought to you by our friends at Durkin Designs. Durkin Designs has you covered no matter what your needs are for your yard. Paver patios, retaining walls, water and fire features, lighting, even if it's just cleanup or maintenance, they've got you covered. Give them a call, 402-779-4444. That's 402-779-4444. I know after all the storms and stuff, I need some cleanup and maintenance for sure. I'm sure you are in a similar boat as I am. Make sure you give Durkin's Designs a call. Joining us now is our friend, my co-host, our co-worker, DB. What's up?
Hey, how are you fine people doing it? I'm in my, this natural element, so you may hear the occasional whistle or a random bird. It's not piped in like the Masters. It's like we're just out here. We're out here doing football.
We're just out here doing it. How's the passing league going?
That's good. We've got a little trio going. So Prep is here and Millard North is as well. So we're letting our younger units get some work right now. But for me, this is like vacation, even though I'm only about 12 minutes from you guys.
How are my young Mustangs looking?
It's a work in progress. You know, they got good numbers, but I mean, learning to get in 2-point wide receiver stances and get out of the gun and do some of these things, it's a whole new thing for them. But you know, they got a lot of talent, so they'll be just fine.
Yeah, it's a little bit of it's. I mean, you're basically talking about the transition from like Solich to Callahan, right? Like that's kind of what's happening there.
Yeah, like what Georgia Tech did in essence, right? Going from Paul Johnson to spread and a lot of 2x3x. So not easy. It takes a little time, but I know in your guys you trust.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's Miller North guys. Their word is their bond. You know this. So, DB, I wanted to Ann and I were talking about Nebraska football quarterbacks a little bit here, just because, you know, if you weren't aware, Dylan Rolo's plus 10,000 odds to win the Heisman, in case you were wondering.
My same reaction, DB.
Yeah. Hey, it's worth a flyer.
I mean, hey, you know, just toss like $50 down, you make a nice little payday.
That's an excellent return on investment right there. ROIs are important.
That's right. Very low risk, very high reward. That's what I'm talking about. But so we kind of got talking about how I feel like Nebraska fans have a little bit of PTSD with quarterbacks, and that's kind of why, you know, we've said it a million times between you and me where it's like, hey, if he can just be average, they're going to be fine. And, you know, I think it's kind of crazy. Like, that's what our expectations are. Our hope is for a quarterback that comes in of this caliber. I feel like it's because of what we've seen. And we kind of landed on Nebraska hasn't had a quarterback they felt really good about for a whole season since, like, maybe Joe Gans at the latest and Zach Taylor at the earliest.
I don't know. So yes and no. I get the PTSD from can't have nice things over a long period of time, because we saw two first-year quarterbacks really hit the ground running, and that was both Martinez, Taylor, and Adrian. And the scary thing about that's also a good thing, is Dylan has the most upside of the two. Of the natural quarterbacks, he clearly has the most upside between Adrian and Taylor. But Nebraska fans, we don't have to be gun shy. We've seen good first years, right? Taylor was incredible as a freshman, and Adrian showed you what he was capable of when he was healthy. So we don't have to reach. And the good thing is, if you're looking for your glass to be half full, it's not so quarterback centric with the run game where you worry about you're just waiting for something bad to happen carrying the football. I mean, he's a distributor. He's going to share the rock. He's going to spread it around. They're going to run it some with traditional handoff run game. So you asked me yesterday, I'm allowing myself to think about if we get good, competent quarterback play. I am starting to go that route. It has been done before. So this is just totally out of left field here, but Ann and I were talking off air about JJ McCarthy a little bit, and I know that's your guy. Are Stop.
You love JJ McCarthy?
I like him better than most.
Okay, I'm gonna call it love. I'm just gonna call it love. Is that all right?
Sure.
How are you feeling about the JJ McCarthy experience in Minnesota? Anna's higher on it than I am right now. I've heard some concerning reports.
I'm Team AZBZ. I like because, well, here's the deal, right? I get it. Late with the football a little bit, the confines, the construct of the offense, but he's with an elite offensive mind, right? His coach is an offensive savant, and I think some of it may be terminology, some of it just may be, listen, everything that he did at the collegiate level was based off of run action. So that takes a little bit of time, whether you're in the gun a good fair amount or you're underneath center without run action. Those little things take some time. I don't think with him it's going to be necessarily a talent issue. I think with him it's more about getting comfortable with what he's going to be asked to do on the NFL level based on the program that he came from. But I like his mental makeup and I like his physical tools.
How do you feel with Justin Jefferson at your fingertips?
Yeah, he's like the ultimate safety blanket. Like McCarthy, those quarterbacks need to be Linus, and let Justin Jefferson be the blue blanket, right? He's getting big time. He's getting big time money, and he's as good as it gets. He's top 3 or 4 in the league. Some may put him 1. He's incredible. So anytime you got a guy like that, let him get as many touches as possible because he can keep you safe. And the other thing is that he's going to draw attention too. So you have to understand, all right, if they're 2-by-1 or they're bracket with this guy, where are my checkdowns? Who can keep me safe? So I think those are the things that Justin Jefferson can do when he's not catching the ball and hauling in, 12, 13, 14 touchdowns a season.
So, DB, for whatever reason, Justin Jefferson talk there reminded me of the way Garrett McGuire was talking about Jamal Banks last night on Husker Sports Nightly. Not saying that Jamal Banks is Justin Jefferson. I want to make that very clear.
What are the odds?
But he was talking about him being for Dylan Raiola, what we're talking about Justin Jefferson being for J.J. McCarthy.
Yep.
He used the term quarterback's best friend. They were talking about going up and winning 50-50 balls. Do you think Jamal Banks is that guy?
Well, so he can't. So relative to this offense, remember we talked about a month ago. He's the one that's not like the others. It's probably Banks and Bonner if you want to categorize 2 guys, big
bodied guys. Yeah.
You get it close. They can play like defenders. But the thing that Banks has that Bonner doesn't have is he's played in the big boy passing offense for multiple years. So he has experience under his belt, but it's not too far-fetched to think again, going back to the safety blanket thing, like Banks is tough. He's experienced. He understands where to sit down in 3 versus 2 versus, hey, if they're man under, what's going to take a hole throw. I think his football IQ from an experience standpoint really allows you to be pretty secure. So, it's like on this show, since I don't know what I'm doing, I trust your expertise. So you're kind of my safe landing spot. I would imagine as Dylan starts to get more comfortable and he's looking for a friend just to help him get by, I would lean on experience as well.
Did you low-key just call yourself the 5-star quarterback of the show? Is that what just happened?
yeah. Except problem is I'm only a 2-star, and I need a lot more Nayers and Banks and Lloyds than most.
So I wanted to ask you about Nair because I know you were super high on him in the spring. You still think after even what we've heard out of Garrett McGuire yesterday, I know he brought up Nair a little bit, but he was super praiseworthy of Jamal Banks. You still think that Nair out of the 2 ends up being more impactful?
Yeah, so again, I think it's going to be a time thing. So even with Nair, who has by far and away the most upside between the 2, Nair's a Sunday talent. Bigger catch radius, more explosive. He just doesn't have Banks' experience. So it's more like a 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. Banks is so complete right now because there's nothing really he hasn't seen. His work ethic is at a high level. His experience is at a high level. His knowledge is at a high level. He's an easy guy to default to. And that's no disrespect to Nair. But if I'm looking at like high-end kind of Sunday talent, Nair probably gets the nod there just because he's so explosive and long. But if you're looking for productivity in the short term, like in week 1, definitely Banks is the experienced guy because he's been there, done that.
All right, DB, got about a minute left here. I asked BC this question because we've talked about the secondary a lot, and I don't know if I asked it very well to him, so I'll try again with you. Is secondary the one place where you don't really know when you're talking about like getting the depth or getting the 5th corner spot? Like, it feels like everywhere else you know who the options are. It feels like basically anybody in that secondary room could be the ones filling those holes. Like, does that kind of make sense? Like, is there any other position on the team that's like that?
No, I mean, that's fair. That's fair if it's relative to what everybody else is doing, because Singleton is healthy, Buford is healthy, Gifford is healthy, right? Those guys are playing. Tommy Hill, he'd be so mad. Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill's a guy that's going to play too. So you have 4 of the 5. Now, Charles is a guy. Hartzog is a guy. Hartsaw could stay at safety, which may kind of bump Buford out because they're both kind of those field type safeties, but they're all going to play. So when you're talking about depth, yeah, we're not as familiar because you may have a Doss that has to play behind Hill. You may have to wait on a Bly Hill to get healthy, who we haven't seen play live. You may have to wait on Jeremiah Charles, who we haven't seen play live. So relative to what everybody else is doing on the field, where you could go 4 or 5 deep at outside linebacker or, 8 deep at D-line, it's fair to say that corners are or secondary is the least known from a depth standpoint, but at the high end, high quality end, they may be at the top.
Don't forget, you won't have to wait on Caleb Benning because he's playing early, baby.
Yeah.
What are his
I'll never be so happy to be so wrong. It's fine.
All right, I'll try not to drop any mics on you today, DB. We'll talk to you later.
Wow. All right.
Thanks, TV.
That's the show for today. We will be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow.